正義と悪の対決だ。棟梁がロボットに変身。チーターも変身。トランスフォーマーベースウォーズ。
Welcome to episode 11 of the Triple Takeover Toycast, a regular podcast about Transformers and occasionally other vintage and related toy lines. Cue the panpipes as this episode sees us release the inner beast and take our first dive into the era of anti-grav racing, tomb raiding, and flawless victories. That's right, it's the 90s, and we're looking at the original Transformers Beast Wars toys. How bizarre. But before we get into it, let's meet my fellow Twisted Fire starters. He's refined, he's sublime, he makes you feel fine, he's ever so good. He's toy writer and photographer Liam from Toybox Soapbox.
Oh, this intro is a bittersweet symphony, isn't it?
Call him Mr. Raider, call him Mr. Vane. He knows what he wants and he wants it now. It's toy photographer, writer and YouTuber Sixo.
I legitimately do not know what to say to that. What an intro. This is incredible.
And I'm Maz. I do toy photos and writing as TFsquareone. Lads, how are you doing?
Great after that. This is legitimately the best intro so far.
It really, it does. I think sure it all speaks. It speaks to all of us, you know, that sort of grew up in that particular era. It's excellent stuff, mate. Well done.
I had a lot to live up to.
It makes me want to push pop.
Oh, push pop! Wow, they were huge. As huge as Coca-Cola spinners in my school.
You've changed the style of the podcast now. I don't want to talk about Transformers. I want to talk about Pogs. Can we do a podcast?
Star Wars Tazos.
Yeah.
So has anyone bought any more toys as a result of this podcast this week, possibly?
Not this week as a result of the podcast, I don't think. No, I think I've been pretty good on that score. Liam?
Well, is that because you've already bought them? You've just bought them all.
Oh, yeah. See, I knew that was coming.
Nothing left.
That's very much not true.
Did you not post pictures of Kiss Players Rodimus literally today?
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, I didn't buy that this week. I bought that ages ago. It just turned up this week. That's all. But yes, I did post pictures of that today. And lovely thing it is as well. Nice to have it back in the fold.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the far off past of last week that you bought it?
Yeah. Yes.
No, it was a good few. It's come from Japan, so it was a good couple of weeks ago at least. I think maybe even 3 weeks ago I bought that. So no. July has been a relatively quiet month so far, I would say, but nothing. Certainly,
all
nothing.
6 days of it.
Yes, well, 6 days of Sixo. It's a long time.
Sounds like an advent calendar merch idea for later this year.
There you go.
6 days of Sixo.
You open it, you get just like little treats from Sixo's butler inside.
Maybe so. Little
Sky
white
spy
glove.
changes.
Yes.
One little white glove.
All little blind bagged treats. That would be quite nice.
Fabulous. Brilliant, yeah.
We'll get on that.
I am so happy to announce that I finally have the last bisque I needed for my collection.
I thought you were going to say Superfly Convoy there for a minute.
He's dangling this, isn't he?
Totally into that then. I was like, oh, here we go. And then it's Bisque. No, I mean, that's great, but, you know.
I deliberately avoided asking you about this in the chat, so I thought, we're going to talk about it. We've got to.
I had to get him out of the box, Superfire Convoy. Normally when I get a box arrives with stuff that I've been buying over a period of time and it arrives, I kind of really pace it out and leave the best till last. But I've been waiting 20 years to get that thing out of the box and roll it up and down on the floor. It's amazing, really. That vehicle mode is everything I hoped it would be. It's just sit and stare. It's wonderful.
Did you have fun extending your ladder?
But I should have witty responses ready for this kind of thing every episode, but I got nothing.
It looked like you did from the pictures that you sent. Do you know what I mean? It looked like you were having the time of your life. So
I was going to ask if the missiles were erect, but I feel like I'd be lowering the tone again, so I won't.
I just want to know if he had to go and scream into a pillow. That was all.
There were none handy.
Handy,
well,
he says.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Dear, oh dear.
Bumper.
In the beginning came the beasts, but nature lies. They're robots in disguise.
I know back in 1996 and 97, I was writing songs in bad bands, playing Wipeout 2097 on the PlayStation and showing off my moves in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 at Funland at the Trocadero in Piccadilly Circus. But what were you guys doing in 1996 and 1997 when Beast Wars came out?
Oh, man. I'm trying to think now. 96. So I would have been 14. I definitely had long hair at the time. I was in a band around that point. We weren't very good. I think we thought we were going to be like the next Nirvana or whatever. I was playing bass at the time. because no other bugger would play bass, you see. So, and I was quite good at it, so I gave it a go. We were called Mother Punker. There you go. That's a name for you. Yeah, no, that was a long time ago. And but I do remember getting into Beast Wars as well. But I'm sure we'll get to all of that a little bit later. But yeah, what an era!
What about you, Liam? What were you doing in 1996?
I was really obsessed with football. So pretty much, I'm quite fond of it still. Quite partial to the odd bit of football, as you might know currently. But yeah. So if you could go back to any day from 1996, chances are I was out somewhere playing football, because it's pretty much all I did through this time. I was obsessed with everything football related, and of course, in the middle. Oh, what was it? Was it last week or this week where it's the anniversary of one of the worst days of my life, which was the England-Germany semi-final in Euro 96.
So were either of you actually still, well, maybe not still, but actually buying Transformers at this time?
No, I very much wasn't, actually. I was, for me, Transformers had been a childhood thing, but, had been put away in the loft, I think, by that point. And it was very much done and dusted for me. But I remember, actually, it wasn't even me that sort of got into Beast Wars to begin with. It was a mate of mine that had seen some of them, I think, in Woolworths. And then I remember going with him, I think, to an Argos to collect the Ultra Optimus Primal, and just seeing it and just being like, okay, that's kind of cool. That looks like a thing. And I kind of remember seeing a couple more of them after that, and that for me sort of got me sold on them quite quickly. So and just kind of got into them from there, really. So and it was just great. It was like, well, it's Beast Wars, isn't it? It was like something new but familiar at the same time.
Yeah, I wasn't picking up any at all, because at that time everything was football. It was football shirts, football stickers, football boots, different shin pads, anything football related. That's all I was buying. Other than Star Wars stuff, I was occasionally picking up. Do you remember Action Fleet, which was around this time? Sort of these small Star Wars vehicles with tiny little figures. I think they did some in Beast Wars on topic. I think they did like these little bases with tiny little. There's the one that turns into a killer whale or something.
There is, yeah. That's Japanese, though. To be fair, never released in this country or in America or what have you. But yeah, there was.
Yeah, it was all. Everything was like micro machines, but slightly bigger. If that makes sense. It's all tiny little figures. So yeah, it was either video games or stuff like that. But it was in 1996 where I did get the Transformers movie on VHS again.
Ooh.
So right around that Christmas, I swapped it with a mate at school. So that was pretty much the limit of my Transformers at that time.
I think it's not too different for me, actually. It was mostly video games. Like it was end of Super Nintendo, start of PlayStation era for me. Yeah. Football, obviously, because I was watching it and supporting. I think it was a lot of music for me as well. Like I said, I was in bad bands. I think bands is stretching it. It was just me. I was making music on Pro Tracker and Fast Tracker on the Amiga, and I was I took the 4-track home from our music department at school, and I was just recording at home. And I remember my dad used to be a sound engineer for news, for like ABC, NBC, and stuff like that, big news channels. And he would sit there and help me record these songs. And as supportive as you try to be as a parent, I think he just felt he had to tell me, "You're terrible." So I think that's how bad I must have been for a generally supportive man to have got to that point. But no, there was no Transformers in my life at that point either.
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, as I say, it was a lot of music for me as well. It really, really was. That was kind of the big thing for me at the time, definitely. Just literally any music I could hear or listen to, get my hands on, playing music as well. I bought my second guitar, I think, when I was 14 or 15. So it was around that time. But that was the first one that I bought myself. I remember saving up the money and going to Birmingham to buy it. And I still have it today. Really, really fabulous thing. So it was definitely music for me, going to gigs and stuff like that and all of that as well. It was great fun.
It's amazing how much music is a part of that time, isn't it? Because that's all I was doing that year as well, other than playing football and stuff. It was just buying CDs. So it was a lot of Wu-Tang and a lot of hip-hop and stuff like that. And PlayStation is all these certain things, isn't it? Are so attached to that time frame. I remember at that time I used to sit up playing like Street Fighter on the PlayStation every Friday night and listen to the Tim Westwood rap show till like 2 a.m, just recording the tape whilst just playing Street Fighter from like 8 p.m. till 4 a.m.
Yeah, recording off the radio was definitely still a thing back then.
Oh, 100%.
Children have no idea.
No. Yeah. Speaking of which, So I would imagine, like around 1996, if people who are in the hobby today, as far as Beast Wars is concerned, does that mean that they would have either been people who were kids at the time, so this was their childhood TV show and childhood exposure to Transformers in stores and on TV, or they had never stopped collecting Transformers? Like a lot of collectors I've met, they never stopped collecting from their childhood, and they would have gone through G2 and then Beast Wars.
I was thinking about this the other day because I think one interesting fact actually that is worth mentioning at this point was that Transformers did never stop, and I think sometimes people phrase it like Beast Wars came out of nowhere after years of Transformers being dead, and obviously that maybe is true if you live in America, but for the rest of the world there was no break. It was just continuous. Generation one rolled right into Generation 2. Certainly in all of Europe, and then Generation 2 rolled straight into Beast Wars. So it was just one continuous thing, and this obviously the toy line changed a lot, as we'll talk about. But even then, you can see the evolution from G2 to Beast Wars, so that's interesting in itself. But I was thinking the other day about this in preparation for this chat, and I think there are probably like very distinct categories of people, and their reaction to Beast Wars and their kind of feeling for it is probably dictated by what category they fit into. Because I think you're right, there probably were old school G1 fans who loved G1 or grew up with G1, and then when Beast Wars came along, they just embraced it. And that's probably the category that I fall into.
Mm-hmm.
Then there were no doubt old school G1 fans that when Beast Wars came along, they were either completely ambivalent to it or just skipped it by, or, as we know, hated it, which is of course going to be talked about today, I'm sure. The whole truck not monkey crowd and all of that clubber. So there were those people as well. But then, of course, as you say, Maz, there will have been many, many, many Transformers fans who actually Beast Wars was their generation, just as there are now Transformers fans that grew up with the Unicron trilogy or the 2007 movie or whatever it is since. So, and I think those fans actually that grew up with it as their childhood thing, I think in many ways they are some of the most protective of Beast Wars. They're the people that you see online now who really have, I wouldn't say like the greatest love for it, but they certainly are the most defensive of it in some ways. Like if anybody slates Beast Wars, they're the first people to kind of jump in and sort of protect it a little bit, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think you've got all of these different categories of people, and I think their feelings for Beast Wars is very much dictated about how they kind of came to it.
Do you think the time plays a big part in that as well? Like, if you look at now, every new iteration of Transformers that comes along, you click like on Facebook or on Twitter, and you follow it forever, and you're always, up to date, and it's always there in your face. Whereas back then, you followed the cartoons and the adverts and stuff, and that was how you knew new stuff was coming out, wasn't it? And Beast Wars, we'll probably get to this, but the cartoon was quite difficult to watch at times in the UK, wasn't it? So it's not quite as difficult. Front and center as G1 had been, where it's adverts everywhere and comics and all that stuff. Whereas Beast Wars, I never saw it around on quite the same level, so it didn't really have the chance to grab my consciousness in the same way. I knew it was there, just I wasn't being hit with it at the same sort of rate.
I think that's fair.
Funny you should say that, because my next question for you guys was what your first exposure to Beast Wars was. And I know my first exposure to Beast Wars was a TV advert. So it's that period of my life where I was maybe 16, 17 years old. I had forgotten about Transformers as something I would follow. And I was watching TV and I saw an advert for Beast Wars toys. And it must have been in the UK. And I distinctly remember this was an advert which included the toy Razor Claw. So it was a TV ad, and it was just the way that the announcer said it in the advert, the voice actor. I've never been able to forget the way he said Razor Claw. I've never, ever forgotten that.
Wow.
So, and it must have been Beast Wars, because I realized it was marketed as Transformers Beast Wars. So it was like, oh, this toy line is still going on, but they're beasts now. And that was about as much attention as I gave. I remember telling my mate, hey, did you see that advert for Transformers on TV? It's all changed. But yeah, so how did you guys first come across it? Like, was it the cartoon?
Well, as I say, for me, it was the toys, definitely. So your Razor Claw advert, that would have been year 2, if anything. That would have been around 97, I guess. But yeah, for me, it was, as I say, almost like wave 1. As soon as they came out, I've no idea how my mate came across it at all. But that was very much my first exposure, was him actually going with him and him buying some of the toys and me just being like, whoa, what is this? And I think it just happened, it helped that it was Optimus Primal and such a great toy that it kind of sparked my interest a little bit as well. So yeah, that was very much it for me. I was going to say, it's interesting, Liam, your point about the kind of saturation of it all and everything. So I think, yeah, it was really difficult to see on TV. I remember watching the first episode of the cartoon and taping it on VHS. But I remember setting an alarm. It came on whatever the platform was. It was on whatever channel of the 4 that we had at the time in the UK. It was on a particular kids platform on one of the channels. I can't remember which one.
I think it was
Someone will know.
ITV. I'm sure it was ITV.
I think you're right. Someone that's listening will remember all of the details, I'm sure. But I remember it being advertised that it was going to come on, and I was super excited because it was, obviously the only way you were going to get to see it. And then I missed the first maybe 3 or 4 minutes of it. I literally started watching from when the Axelon has just crashed, and I was gutted. I remember just being like, "Oh man, I can't believe I've missed it." And I taped all of the episodes, and that was just how I had them for ages. It was on, tape VHS, and trying to kind of find out when they were on. I remember the schedule was really shaky as well. It was like some weeks on, some weeks off. It was very, very hard to see.
Did you watch the whole series that way?
Mostly, yes. Definitely up to some of season 2. And then I'm pretty sure, I was trying to remember this, how I saw the rest of it, because I think either they stopped showing it or whatever, I can't remember. But I'm fairly certain that I bought a VHS recording from someone else with all of the episodes on, which I know now sounds like mad. Like, what? Do you know what I mean? Like, someone recorded these episodes, because of course this was a world pre-DVDs, pre all of that. There was none of that. I mean, you were still. Do we even have CDs at the time? I don't think so. Yes. Do you know what I mean? Did we? What?
Yeah.
Where were CDs?
CDs are like the 80s.
Compact discs were introduced in 1985.
Yeah.
Whoa, okay. You blow my mind a little bit there. I always think of CDs as more of a kind of, turn of the millennium type dealie, but maybe they did go further back.
I think you'll find that was mini disc.
Well,
right.
Don't talk to me about your future technology.
The greatest format that never really existed.
Yeah. But no, I think it's because I have such fun memories of making mixtapes, maybe, that cassettes for me sort of remained a thing for so long.
Absolutely. And they were absolutely a thing for me at the time as well, cassettes and making mixtapes. It's just inexplicably tied to mid-teenage years, early teenage years, and that 100%. 90s era especially.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I bought a pre-recorded VHS of all of the episodes, and it had season 3 in there as well, because I remember there was a huge gap in between for me watching the end of season 1 and then season 3. Massive gap, a ridiculously long time. So for ages I had been aware of season 3 of some of what had happened, because I'd seen a teaser for it online, which had blown my mind. But the thing I was also going to say, and this is quite worth mentioning, is that, Liam, you mentioned that there wasn't kind of much way to find out about it. This for me was also my first experience of reading about Transformers online, really, other than looking up bits of G1.
You had the internet at this point,
here and there. Yes, not necessarily straight away, not like when Beast Wars first began, but at my school later. So that would have been 98 probably by this point. So we had the internet at my school, and you could go on at lunchtime and check stuff. And I remember reading bwtf.com, Ben's World of Transformers, Benson Yee, who of course is still around in the fandom today, and a very, I'm sure a lot of people know who he is. And God, I read that website pretty religiously, actually. And so even the toys I didn't have, I would kind of see what they were about. But I think he was one of many resources that were out there, and you got to see a lot of the stuff that was upcoming. Actually, it would have been even before that. I'm saying that, but it was even maybe 97, because I remember in 97 seeing prototype pictures for Transmetal Scavenger that was released in 1998. And I remember that blew my mind. And there was prototype pictures on the internet of Beast Wars 2nd, Galvatron, as well, which again blew my mind. Actually, grey resin prototype pictures. I was looking for them again relatively recently, just to see if they were still out there, but they've gone. But yeah, so there was quite a lot of Beast Wars activity online, even at that point. The showrunners, the story editors, and that they were online hugely, and hanging out in forums and things, things like Old Toys Transformers and what have you. They were very present in the fandom and talking to fans, giving them insight on the show, that kind of stuff. So there was really, I think, actually Beast Wars had a huge online presence.
That's really interesting. I had no idea about the fact that the showrunners were actually involved with the community. I mean, I got involved with ATT Alt Transformers probably around the year 2000 or 1999, something like that. I think back in '96, the only access to the internet I had was occasionally going with my dad to Middlesex University and like popping on and sending an email to a friend in Australia every now and then. That was so novel.
Yeah,
really.
But I think, I remember there was like the odd band website I would look up as well at the time, but I don't remember looking at Transformers online until 1998 at university when I went. For the longest time, I thought BWTF was BeastWarsTransformers.com. It was only like not that many years ago that I realized it was Ben's World of Transformers.
Yeah. No, I think it was just maybe a happenstance, but it's funny because actually I had been on the internet much before that. I remember going on the internet. It was a couple of years before that at least, because it was pre-Beast Wars. Because my mum teaches, or used to teach. She's retired now, but she used to teach IT. So that was, computers and things were always a bit of a thing in our house. In fact, I remember her telling me she'd been on the internet for the first time, coming home and saying, I surfed the web today. And I was just like, whoa.
Do you know what I mean? Phrase, surf the web, is so of its time as well. Wow.
It was just an exceptional, it was so exciting, just the idea of the internet, Yeah, it was, and the whole dial-up noise and all of that, and, dial-up modems. But it was just ridiculously exciting, the idea of the internet. Whereas now,
agreed. Yeah.
My boy is, he's fully aware of the internet, and he's internet in your pocket, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's just totally different.
How did you come across it, Liam? First time?
Beast Wars for me, I think the first time I must have saw it, I think it would have been in Woolworths and places like that. I remember walking through and just seeing the Transformers logo. You remember, because it's that sort of, not just the Beast Wars bit, it was the Transformers bit of it that caught my eye, because it's like that late 80s logo, isn't it? The sort of slanted one, but it was in green. And straight away I was like, what on earth is this? And then it just caught my attention. Then I was looking at it going, animals? This will never catch on. And so, but
animals.
Yeah, so I looked at them, but I didn't really get that involved in them, because at that time I was more looking for Star Wars things. And then it was the cartoon, and it's like funny that Sixo was saying about how, it was awkward to find and stuff, because I distinctly remember, not in one of my finest moments, but I got suspended from school for a few days, and one of the reasons I was quite happy with it was because I knew I could watch Beast Wars, because it was on, I think it was on ITV, but it was on in the daytime. One of those shows like Good Morning or something like that.
Yeah,
it was on in the non-holiday times, so it was great because I could just watch it through the week.
So do you think that was specifically put on television for children who were suspended from school and they needed something to do to keep them out of further trouble, was put Beast Wars on TV at that time?
That was it. You need to learn about the anatomy of a purple-looking Barney cyborg.
Optimus Primal transforms with double cannons firing. T-Rex Megatron transforms with pulverizing claw and twin missile launchers. Each sold separately.
Okay, one thing I think it'd be good to start with actually dispelling a myth, and this is one that I actually fell for. I was only made aware of recently by you, Sixo, that I had heard that back in the day, Beast Wars had been released by Hasbro in one. Was it Kenner at the time? I can't remember.
It was Kenner.
In one chain of stores in the US, and then it was either KB or Kmart had gotten Machine Wars, and this was like an experiment to see which performed better before an animated series was created. But that's actually not true at all, is it?
It's not true, yeah. And I did think that as well for the longest time, the idea being that actually both toy lines were released simultaneously, with the idea of Hasbro / Kenner, as you said, seeing which one did better, and that would be the toy line that won out almost, or the one that got the TV show or whatever. The reality is not true for two distinct reasons. Number one, actually Machine Wars was released in 1997, which was the second year of Beast Wars. So Beast Wars was already a hit at that point. It was already established and doing well, and also was already on TV at that point. So it was, Machine Wars was actually, if anything, an experiment to see if there was any appetite in almost going back to vehicle mode Transformers, kind of on the side.
You actually said that Beast Wars was a hit in the first year. Do you know how many times throughout the years I've heard people say that Beast Wars saved Transformers?
Well, I think that's true, isn't it? To some extent, I think it was a real roll of the dice for them, but it was a bit of a G2 had fizzled out. It had not delivered the sales that I think they'd hoped. This is my understanding anyway, so I'm fully happy to be wrong on some of the details or all of it or whatever. So, but this is certainly my understanding, having kind of read bits about it in the past, was that G2 had fizzled out, and that was why it went to Kenner. That's because they'd newly acquired Kenner, Hasbro. And it was a bit of a roll of the dice to be like, okay, we need to do something drastic to kind of re-energize this a little bit. And it was kind of a, let's give it to Kenner, let's see what it does. And if it doesn't work, maybe Transformers is over. And fortunately, it found an audience.
You said it saved Transformers, but we were talking about how Transformers had continued. It'd obviously been going down. So did it really save it, or did it just kind of pull it back up a little bit and reignite some interest?
I mean, isn't that the same as saving it, in the respect that I think they weren't going to keep continuing it if it never did well? G2, as I said, had fizzled off, I think, and it was already kind of in the state where they were like, okay, what do we do with this? Hence the completely different direction. So I think had Beast Wars not done well, I don't know that. I mean, maybe it would have been revived at some point. Who's to say? But it would have been a very different picture. It's possible, I guess, that they might have still made the movies at some point. I'm sure that we would have got a live action Transformers film at some point. I mean, it's a bit like Ghostbusters or any of those properties that get revisited eventually, isn't it? Because they sort of live on in the public consciousness too much. They're not going to be left alone forevermore. But certainly, I don't know that it would have continued much past 96, 97, all the way through. Whereas actually, what you've ended up with is an uninterrupted toy line. Transformers has never stopped since 1984, and I don't know that you would have got that without Beast Wars. I think had Beast Wars not been a success, I think there would have been a break at some point for sure.
So do you think it was on its deathbed then after G2? Because it wasn't successful at all, was it, G2? No, I was going to say, I just wonder if it was at that point where they were thinking they're going to cancel it, and maybe Beast Wars was like a final Hail Mary and it just worked out.
Yeah, I think that's, as I say, I think that's exactly what it was. It was just, that I don't think they, I think, Beast Wars was a real kind of rip up the formula and see what we do that's completely new. I don't know what the inspiration for doing Animals was, or why they thought that was going to be successful, or any of that, but it was definitely a, let's completely turn this on its head and do something just completely wild with it, pardon the pun. And clearly it worked. But I think had they just continued to do machine Transformers, I think there was definitely a worry from within Hasbro and Kenner that it was just going to die on its ass for sure. Because G2, as you say, had really kind of not been as successful as I think they'd hoped.
Regardless of what people think of Beast Wars, it really did need a refresh at that time, isn't it? Even if it wasn't for you, Transformers needed to be something different for a bit. Because to me, I always think of RID as being the thing that revived Transformers, because I think that's mostly because I was quite ambivalent to Beast Wars, so it didn't really catch much of my interest. So when RID came back, it felt like it came back with a bang, whereas with Beast Wars, it just kind of continued, and it's like, oh, that's happening over there. And I just think it's...
Yeah, well, actually, the interesting thing about RID is that the original plan was that they were going to continue with the Beast era, because it was going to be Transtech. So that was going to come after Beast Machines. So actually, the whole Beast era had proven, and Beast Machines had been, even Beast Machines, which I think had tailed off a bit, but I think it was still doing okay. And that was actually why we got RID in the West, because we weren't set to get it at all. That was a Takara thing in 2000. And the only reason we got RID here was because Hasbro at the last minute shelved the whole Transtech idea, and then they needed something to kind of just literally have a toy line for 1 year in between the end of Beast Machines and Armada, because otherwise there would have been a year with no product on the shelves. So that
I remember those Transtech designs coming out into the fandom, and Cheetor especially, and it just felt like something that was happening completely adjacent to my interests in Transformers. It was something that a lot of people were clearly really excited to see and were talking about. And it's very rare that concept drawings like that don't look cool. And I just remember thinking how cool they looked, but again, it was so separate from what my interest in Transformers was at the time. But I do recall that was it's a touch point for me back in the day.
I think if you've not been on the kind of Beast saga journey, if you like, if you'd not been there from Beast Wars, if you'd not felt the love for Beast Wars, were you going to be into Beast Machines? I doubt many people got into Transformers because of Beast Machines. And then, Beast Machines, as it were, already was quite a huge evolution from Beast Wars. And a lot of people that were fans of Beast Wars didn't like Beast Machines as well. So you've already kind of got people maybe falling off a bit at that point. Transtech, from what we've seen of it, the designs, was due to be another huge evolution in many ways again. And I think taking it further away from kind of traditional Transformers, Beast Machines have caused tons of controversy with some of the story elements, some of the kind of the morphing style of transformation, bits of the whole organic thing, lots of stuff in there that very traditional Transformers fans hated with a burning passion. And I think Transtech was another roll of the dice that was going to probably take it further away. So it doesn't surprise me. And to be honest, looking at some of those designs now, they don't feel very quote unquote Transformers. They feel like a real departure. So it doesn't surprise me at the time, if you'd not been on the Beast Wars journey, that it would have looked completely alien, I'm sure.
Taking a few steps back, we were talking about Beast Wars being a success and it reigniting interest in fans. Do you think the toy line was more responsible for that, or the cartoon?
I think that's a great question. I don't know, is the honest answer. My gut feeling is that the cartoon must have had a huge amount to do with it, because definitely the cartoon was a route in for a lot of people.
It's a great cartoon.
It's a phenomenal cartoon. It's kind of become the classic now of people like, what's your favorite Transformers cartoon, your favorite Transformers show? And people say Beast Wars almost by default. And a lot of people will say animated now as well. Some people might say, I don't know, Transformers Prime or whatever, but I can see why people still say Beast Wars. And I would be hard-pressed not to say Beast Wars, to be honest, because I just think that they did a great job with it. I think they did a fantastic job at making it completely new and establishing new characters in a new setting, something we'd never seen before, but also tying it in heavily to the past. And I think the fact that it started as a new show, but quickly became a continuation of the same franchise history that we'd already seen, I think it's expertly done, honestly, the way it builds.
I just watched, I did a watch through with you guys. Do you remember? I think it was something like 2-3 years ago now. And I got all the way up to season 3, past the agenda, past the start of season 3. So I'd seen that connection to G1. And this is a show that for years, I know Paul Hitchens had tried to get me to watch this show. He even lent me his DVDs and, constantly said, have you watched them yet? I was like, I will watch them. And I actually ended up watching episodes of Beast Machines before I'd ever seen Beast Wars, because I think Beast Machines was out at a time where I was beginning to think I might enjoy watching Transformers on TV again, and that happened to be on TV. So I think had Beast Wars been a few years later, I think I would have maybe gotten into it at that point, because it wasn't too much before Car Robots that I saw those Beast Machines episodes. But so I've just finished watching another Transformers series, the whole show, and I really enjoyed it, but it was exactly what I expected it to be. And then I rewatched a few Beast Wars episodes last night, actually, like The Agenda, The Trigger, Code of Hero, Optimal Situation, Other Voices. I watched all of those last night, Aftermath as well. And I remember the massive deal that everyone made of The Agenda and Code of Hero, to the point that when we watched them together in our watch through, I was like, I'm expected to think this is amazing. And it's good, but I might have missed the significance. Whereas other Beast Wars episodes I'd really enjoyed, some of them have been terrific. But having watched them last night, and I watched Code of Hero again, it really hit differently. I mean, I was so impressed by that episode. I mean, the lines that Dinobot comes out with throughout that episode are just brilliant, and it was such a fantastically made cartoon episode. And even The Agenda, I was just hooked immediately, and I'd forgotten who turns up in that episode. I really thought that was earlier in the show, so that was like fab. So
Yeah,
I can't wait to watch that all again and then finish season 3 as soon as I can, because I enjoyed that so much last night.
That's really great to hear. I actually remember that watch through that we did so well. I remember, I mean, it was before those episodes, of course, but I remember was it the third one, the web? And there's a bit where Cheetor
you
falls
mentioned it.
asleep right at the start and then has a dream and he's back on Cybertron. And there's a blink and you miss it 1 second clip of Starscream in his jet form. I remember watching it with you and you just kind of going, what is that Starscream?
Yeah.
You know, and because you didn't, I think you had a vague notion that there was some connection to G1 at this point, or you weren't.
I'm not sure I did. You know, I think I was just genuinely surprised at just how close to G1 it ended up being, and I'd managed to completely miss that information throughout all this time. And I think that says to me that it was the toys during those years that put me off being interested in Beast Wars, because I don't think I ever had anything against the fiction or the idea of it, and watching it has been incredibly entertaining. But for every agenda, there seemed to be a low road, you know, where the Rhinox fart episode, you know, it's like,
there is
come on. And I actually forgotten how much slapstick there was, even in like the agenda.
It's huge amount. There are definite, some of the slapstick, I will say, like it does rub me a little bit the wrong way. It's not my shtick. Do you know what I mean? There's a bit, there's an episode coming in the Fusors, it's 2-parter, and the end of the first part ends on a hugely serious note. You know, you've got like three Autobots. What am I on about? Maximals. You've got Dinobot, Cheetor, and Rat Trap facing off against the whole of the Predacon army, and it ends on like how are they going to get out of this note? It's quite, you know, bit of gravitas. And then the next episode starts, and there's a bit of gravitas, but there's a huge amount of slapstick as well. You know, you've got characters bumping into each other and swapping heads, you know, eyes popping out, that kind of stuff. And I remember even watching it for the first time, just being like, oh no, don't do that, please. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think occasionally the cartoon suffers from like a little like sort of jilted tonal shift, you know, where it goes from being like uber serious to just like having a kind of comedic moment. And it's still a kid's cartoon at the end of the day, so I guess you've got to expect that. But yeah, that would be definitely a criticism for me, and that's not me being like I want it to be uber serious, because I actually like a lot of the comedy that is in it. I think when it is funny and it works, it's hugely funny, and even some of the slapstick elements I'm all for. I just think that they kind of need their place, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite Junko and Robots in Disguise every episode having some kind of accident in her red car, but I remember like the Waspinator scenes and, you know, the Rat Trap scenes, but I had actually forgotten how good the dialogue was in Beast Wars until I watched those episodes last night. I mean, it's such good dialogue. It's so watchable. It really is.
Well, that was that was Larry DiTilio and Bob Ford who did all of the scripts, everything. And as I say, they were hugely involved with the community at the time as well, because I believe when they started writing it, they didn't know much about Transformers. They weren't... Again, I would need to double check this to be 100% sure. So, you know, if you are listening to this and I'm wrong, feel free to say, but I'm 95% certain that they didn't know much beyond a kind of passing knowledge of Transformers to begin with. So they got the gig, started writing the show, and they had no intention to begin with of like making it this sequel essentially to Generation 1. They just started writing it. Hence why you get stuff like Remember the Great War in the first episode. You know,
I was going to say, because I watched that yesterday and I picked up on that straight away. I was like, I don't remember them introducing that stuff so early.
Well, they at that point, they were just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool? We'll throw this in. It doesn't impact our storyline that we're telling, but if you have been a fan of the original Transformers, then you'll get a cool kick out of it. You know, even the stuff like the Starscream appearance, you know, and I think it wasn't until they wrote Possession with where Starscream actually appears that they were like, yeah, okay, we're going to tie this in properly. You know, we're gonna kind of make this a sort of quasi sequel almost. But yeah, those guys. Yeah, well, and then if anything, it sort of changes G1 continuity. It's kind of, you know, and there are bits in a way that happen in G1, like the arc moving and stuff like that, which are, you know, you see happen in Beast Wars, which is kind of fun. But yeah, they were all over the internet, those guys, and I remember. I never interacted with them, but I remember reading a lot of the kind of, you know, after the fact, a lot of the stuff that they'd written, and people were asking them about, you know, Dinobot speeches and things like this. And of course, it's all Shakespearean, you know, it's all like a lot of it is lifted, either in part or whatever from, you know, from Hamlet mostly. But, you know, they were having great fun with it. You could tell, and that by this point, second season, they were just like off. They were like, let's do this. Let's make this awesome. And I think because of the first season having done well, they've been given a lot more free reign as well. And clearly, they kind of found a bit of a kind of niche with it, which is you can see. I think
that whole involvement of creators in the fandom is a thing that obviously people officially working for Transformers have tried down the years. And I remember, I think it was actually Aaron Archer who joined TFW 2005 and as Orson, and there was like Orson's World was a little partial forum within TFW 2005. That's why actually that 2007, I think it's Salvage, the toy from the movie, has Orson written on the side of the toy.
Yeah.
I think some kind of callback to that. But yeah, and obviously then he left. Maybe he didn't think it was a good idea to stick around anymore. But to think that the writers were involved with the fan, that's so awesome.
That's why there are so many, and again, it's blink and you miss it stuff. There are so many nods to the fandom in the show. So stuff like there's a bit where Waspinator gets knocked on the head and calls himself Wonko the Sane and stuff like that. And
wasn't that Ben Yee's online tag at the time?
It was, yeah, I believe. And there are numerous. There's one bit where I can't remember whose name it is, but there's one fan that's called Sector something or other, where Megatron's searching for something. I forget the name now. It's been so long since I've seen it. But there are lots of little nods to fans. Their names are included in the show in one way or another. Whether it's written on something on the side of a panel or actually said by one of the characters. So, and that was all because those guys were interacting with those fans, and they were just like, okay, we'll throw them a little nod and just say thanks. And I think that's quite cool. But I think it shows as well in the kind of the actual way that the show went, that they were kind of getting this influence back as well. And I think that's probably why it's so revered today.
I always thought it was really clever how they jettisoned the pods, from the Axelon at the start. And it gets around the G1 cartoon problem of where did Red Alert turn up from and all of this.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was such a clever way to avoid that problem, which plagues G1, doesn't it? All these characters just randomly show up with no rhyme or reason. It's just like they've always been there. But with Beast Wars, it was every time they needed a new toy or a character introduced, it just falls out the sky because you knew that's where it was all along, and it's there from the very first episode. I just think that's just.
And they're still using that mechanic in the 2007 movies and the ones that came subsequently.
It's true. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was introduced in Beast Wars that has become part of Transformers lore. Stasis pods and all of that kind of stuff.
Sparks.
Sparks.
Yeah.
Sparks is the obvious one. Sparks is the biggest one, if anything. A lot of this stuff. But yeah, I agree. And also the kind of the limited setting. Having a limited number of characters in a cast versus G1, which was endless. And I must admit, I loved reading the original comic and having this huge cast of characters. I mean, it just felt like anybody could show up at any point, and that the world building and the universe of that G1 comic, especially more even than the cartoon, in my opinion, just felt awesome. But I also loved that they pared it down in Beast Wars and had this limited cast, and I think that what they did, that I agree with you, Liam, that was very clever, was that it created a lot of excitement. Anytime a pod landed, it was like this real rush. We're going to get a new character, and it was good, definitely.
It also just removes that need for any kind of explanation or backstory of why they've suddenly showed up. It's just there they are. It's in the first episode, and and it just continues for the show, so as well. It's just always ticking away where these are coming from. And it's like you were just saying there about the small cast. One of the things I'm not the biggest Beast Wars show fan, as you know, but one of the things I always appreciate is when characters show up and they go off. They do go off somewhere, and they're around. And it's not like Generation 1 where Skids is here 1 minute, then he just vanishes and you never see him again. Or Red Alert pops up in like 2 episodes, like 15 episodes apart or something with no, it's just, he's always in the background behind the camera or something. Whereas with Beast Wars, it would go to Tigatron and he's off doing something because he wants to be off on his own. I was quite like that. I thought that was just, it's better storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there were no real loose ends in that show. There was nothing that, I mean, there were bits, that kind of got more focus than others and whatever. But thinking about it now, I'd struggle to say to you, oh, I don't know what happened to that. Like they introduced something and then it just went nowhere. Some of the alien stuff, I think, hangs together better than other bits. I think some of the alien stuff, you can see in part that they were kind of writing it as they went, and that's fine. But overall, I think it's quite a cohesive show. I think it hangs together pretty well.
I think the cast was so well written. Like if I remember on that watch through, I constantly referred to Cheetor as Pointless Cat. But for every Pointless Cat episode he had, there was Rhinox demonstrating that he was the most capable Autobot or Maximal in the history of the race of transforming robots.
That's true.
There was nothing he couldn't do, and whatever he did it better than anyone else. When he got angry and pulled out his Gatling guns, it was over. He was the smartest of the lot, the most capable, the cool head. Whenever Primal wasn't there, he was in charge. It's just, what a character. And he's the one they gave flatulence to.
And he's always like that, though, isn't he, as well? That's kind of one of the things I was about to say is that I really appreciate it when shows have an internal consistency to them. So everything makes sense within that world. And even the slapstick stuff in Beast Wars, it makes sense in that. Yep. Whereas G1 doesn't have that. It's a lot of very random stuff shows up, MacGuffins, all sorts of stuff that just... And sometimes it takes you out, doesn't it? Because you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't back up all this other stuff that's happened. Whereas Beast Wars never really breaks that. Even when it gets weird, it's all still connected in a way where you're like, that could totally happen in whatever's going off here. Or character changes or whatever, you're like, yeah, it makes sense because there's some reason for it. There's always a reason. And I appreciate that.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think the characters were exceptionally well defined and well rounded. To the point where they did evolve over the seasons. That you did see character evolution, which was for Transformers was a novel concept because in G1 there was an element of resetting. Most episodes there wasn't much in the way of story evolution. Of course you had the movie, people died, and then in season 3 it was a completely different scenario. And then you got characters like Rodimus that I think got some growth in season 3 of the original cartoon, but I think really Beast Wars felt like the first time that you could honestly say these characters are evolving. I mean, you look at Dinobot from season 1, episode 1, through to where he ended up. That for me is really good storytelling, honestly.
And of course, good characters make people want to buy toys. It's a fact. You read, you're like, if you're reading a comic and you're watching a cartoon and you start really falling in love with these characters, you start to really, they mean something to you. It makes you want figures, or at least people of our persuasion who end up collecting toys, makes you want toys of those figures. And I can totally see how that would work. Every time I've watched Beast Wars episodes, consciously wanting to get into it, like last night, I start thinking about the toys I want, the physical representation of that thing that I admire or that thing that I'm impressed by or my imagination is fired by. And, I have to admit, I've been looking on eBay today at old Optimus Primal, the Transmetal. Ooh. And I'll tell you what really sold it to me, and this is so me and ridiculous. Looking at the box, in the top right corner, it says in Digiface font, electronic. And I was like, yes, that's for me.
That's fantastic. Were you really looking at a Transmetal Optimus Primal?
Absolutely. I totally think I'm going to end up with one of those. And of course, I've had the Optimus Primal toy, the Ultra. Yeah, we'll come on to that later.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, I completely agree with you. I think those Transmetal toys, that was really when the cartoon kind of came into its own in terms of marrying with the toy line, because a lot of the original cast, Dinobot is a good example, actually. The Dinobot toy looks very, very little like the cartoon counterpart. Even down to the head sculpt is nothing like it, really. He's got a faceplate on the toy, for one thing.
Two mighty beasts fused in one! New Beast Wars fuse hearts! New figures, each so different.
One thing that confused me, learning about Beast Wars, and actually collecting Titans Return and Legends, because they did one release, I think it was through LG EX, and it was Primal as a bat and Megatron as a crocodile. So what was going on there then?
Well, that was a 2-pack. That was one of the first toys that was released. A lot of people think, or I've heard people saying that it was the original Optimus Primal toy, but actually it would have been, I think, released concurrently with the Ultras as well. So the T-Rex Megatron and the Gorilla Ultra Optimus Primal. I believe they were certainly part of the same wave. Whether they were actually released on the same day or not, I don't know. But so there was a 2-pack that was released, basic flip changes. I've done a video about them on my YouTube, and it's Bat Optimus Primal and Crocodile Megatron. And I think that there was some consideration that they were going to be the toys that were going to be in the cartoon originally. I know that it was in discussion, at least, and then there's
animation to support that, isn't there? Or am I just thinking of a toy advert?
I genuinely, now that you say that, I'm like, I want to say, yeah, absolutely. But I also don't want to put, I don't want to say it so definitively when I would need to look it up to confirm, to be honest. But I know it was mooted. I know there was some discussion around which do they go with. And I presume that, Hasbro / Kenner said, do the larger toys. I would imagine would be the logic there, because they were the big toys of the first year. So the T-Rex and the gorilla.
And wasn't the original name, and tell me if I've dreamt this, wasn't the original name Beasties?
That was Canada. So
Okay,
in Canada, the TV show is known as Beasties. And you can always spot you can always spot a Canadian Beast Wars fan, because they will still refer to it as Beasties today. There's
was
a lot
the packaging? Did the packaging say Beasties as well? Because I'm sure I've seen that logo, but maybe it was just from the Canadian animation.
I guess it must have done. I don't know. I've never seen. I don't think. I might be wrong in saying I think that it was still Beast Wars toy line. I could be wrong. I know it was predominantly a cartoon thing, so I would need to double check that. My knowledge of Beast Wars variants is not up there. Do you know what I mean? I've got sort of a cursory knowledge of a lot of it, but not in any great detail. Packaging variants and stuff. But it was. So you can. It's funny, I suppose, now that some people still hang on to the Beasties name a little bit, and are quite proud of it. I think it's cool. I can imagine growing up with it. That. For me, that roar, that Beast Wars, is really ingrained in my brain. So I'm sure if you grew up with it shouting Beasties, you would be the same, wouldn't you?
I'm pretty sure it's Reest Roars.
Yeah, certainly in your mind, yes.
Is that absolutely. By Scooby-Doo?
I think he was one of the first wave of toys, wasn't he?
Should have been. You imagine now, if they did Beast Wars now, there could be like collaborative crossovers. I mean, not just Jurassic Park, but right. Scooby-Doo, it'd be incredible.
But can we just talk about the fact that Liam's dream has just come true?
I know.
That there is a Jurassic Park Beast Former official crossover.
I was
going to
bring it up at the start when you asked me, and then the conversation moved, and I thought I'll save this for another day. But oh my god!
I think Hasbro are bugging Liam's phone or something, because honestly, I remember a conversation ages ago about what if they did. Potential Jurassic Park crossover, what would it look like? And there was some discussion about it being the Jeep, and because of course you've got your alternators repaint and what have you.
Yeah.
Would it be the Jeep and all of that? And I remember, I'm sure, you saying, "Oh, it'd be quite cool if they did one of the dinosaurs as well." And I swear, someone in Hasbro is bugging your phone or something, because these ideas don't just come out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? It's like they're literally catering to you.
When it was leaked, everybody was saying the Jeep, but I just had this feeling it was going to be the Explorer, and it turned out to be. But what's even more amazing is that, I don't know if you saw, I put it on Twitter, but it's actually released, or it will be delivered on my birthday.
Oh, we saw it.
Yeah. So it's
I
like
think the best part was you were out on a massive bender the night that this was released. So we're all like, is this a joke? Like, is Liam just not interested because he's just not online? He's not responding to this at all. That's why I didn't quite believe that this was a thing. Was it a fan kit bash? And in the morning, you must have got a slew of notifications.
Oh my god! There was an amount of messages I had on Twitter and WhatsApp that just said, "Have you died? Are you dead?" And then somebody had tweeted me during the game. I would go, "Oh, have you seen it? It's amazing, isn't it?" And all I'd replied with, "Yeah, Harry Kane's goal was amazing, wasn't it?" So I must have misinterpreted what they said. But then when I was reading back, it turns out people had sent me pictures, so I must have looked at them and glanced away just for a second. And but yeah, the next morning I was so confused. It was like I was discovering it for the very first time when, whilst cleaning up a lot of stuff that needed cleaning up. Let's say that.
I just think the only way this could have been more catered to you is if the Jurassic Park Jeep was some kind of variant of RID X-Brawn, and the dinosaur was like Swoop somehow. Something from that would have been the only way they could have catered it to you even further.
I can't believe they've done the Explorer, because it's my favourite fictional vehicle of any kind. And for years, because it's Ford, they tend to just not do it. They always just do the Jeep, which I love, but you want the Explorer. And yeah, they've done it. Which I've also just ordered that set, and it's coming tomorrow. I don't know. I think we spoke about it before, the Mattel set where it's got the cracking in roof. Also comes with a T-Rex.
Actually, speaking of catering to fans and this whole accuracy thing, Sixo, you were saying how the second year of Beast Wars toys are so much more show accurate. And actually, one of the things I thought was really cool about the cartoon was how the cartoon animation models transformed like the toys. So that was a really the way I can't remember who it is exactly, but sometimes during transformation, I think it's Primal. Like maybe he sort of does a half twirl as he's walking during the transformation.
Primal. Yeah,
Which is fantastic because that toy is superb. But that first year of toys didn't look like the cartoon, but they did establish what has come to be known as like specific size classes in Transformers releases, right?
Yeah, they did. It was the first. Yes, it was the first size classes ever because G1, G2 had never done that. And it was interesting because it was purely based on size, not on parts count or any of the kind of other considerations that you get now. So there was none of that discussion of like, well, why is Rodimus or whatever size he is? What is he, a leader or whatever? I can't remember.
Commander, new Rodimus.
Commander. Yeah, cool. Honestly, size classes. It's like my Achilles heel of knowledge. People ask me about size classes sometimes, and I'm like, I don't know. Honestly, I know the Beast Wars size classes by heart. You know, like that is my territory. Anything after Beast Wars, I got no clue. I don't know what is what. Why do they keep changing the names? You know, like it makes no sense to me. But yeah. So in Beast Wars, you had very simply basic, which started off as flip changes in year 1, and then quickly in year 2 they dropped the flip changer gimmick. But still, that was the smallest size. Very, very tiny little toys. Then you had deluxe, sort of regular standard size, if you like. Then you had mega, bit bigger. So stuff like Inferno and things like that. And then you had Ultra, which was the original Optimus Primal and Megatron, and then the combiners and so on and so forth. And then they did one super toy, which was in the 3rd year, which was Optimal Optimus, of course. And so yeah, it was a new thing, but it's stuck ever since. It's not the only thing that Beast Wars introduced as a toy line, but it's definitely one of the most prevalent, I think.
And the other would be like ball joints.
Well, actually, ball joints have been around since G2. Wow. So
even Wreck-Gar in G1.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You had
Cyberjets in G2 had a lot of ball joints, didn't they?
There was Cyberjets. There was a couple of toys. I mean, even stuff like the even the laser rods.
Is it Volt or Jolt, the little gold car, that the GPS car?
Yeah, the GPS car. Yeah, even the laser rods had little ball joints and things to an extent. Not very good ones, but still. But yeah, so there were ball joints and more articulation in G2. I think what was different about G2 is that it was a real hodgepodge. So some toys had ball joints, some toys had this gimmick, that gimmick, that gimmick. You know, there was no real consistency with it. And, you know, this is coming from someone that loves G2, but it's not hard to see why it was a difficult toy line for people to kind of get into. Do you know what I mean? Because it was a real throw anything at it and see what sticks. And you know, the toys felt very disparate as a result. Whereas in Beast Wars, they took a lot of the stuff that had already been done and just made it a uniform part of the line. So it's ball joints as standard. So like the flip changer gimmick had been done previously, and obviously the some of the toys that had been designed for G2 but not released were the flip changers that were later then released in Machine Wars, and then RID and Robot Masters, and like that Mirage toy and all of those guys. That was Skidsy in RID, and so those had already been designed, but there were other kind of flip changer gimmicks and things as well, and they just standardized that in Beast Wars. So it's just another example. So I think, but there were new gimmicks as well. There was a lot of spring-loaded stuff in Beast Wars first year. Things like Megatron's little Ultra Megatron's got a little water cannon thing, which I guess had been done sort of on some toys, but yeah, again, it was the incorporation of gimmicks as part of the toy line, I think, that was quite new in that regard.
I mean, the gimmicks on Primal were just every bit of him seemed to have concealed some sort of gimmick. That's a memory I have of that toy, and I don't think the version I had the mask. It didn't have the mutant mask. I think it had lost that. But it's just the swords in the wrists. Was it? Was in the legs? I can't remember. And the
swords stow away in his backpack so that you can flip out. The mutant mask will kind of unpeg. You can take it off actually. But yeah, the swords. He's got flip out shoulder mounted launchers, which then have got little missiles in them. And if you flip out the launchers, you can stow the swords away, sort of in his backpack, which is very cool. And then he's got his one arm splits apart, not quite like the show, because in the show it's like a pop-out arm cannon, and he has them in both. On the toy, he's got one arm just literally separates out and becomes a gun, which is just the coolest thing ever. And it's pretty menacing. And then the other hand has got a little pop-up compartment with like a skull mace weapon in it, which is very cool as well. And actually, that even that has been referenced since. I forget which the name of it, but one of the fossilizers in Kingdom, their head
Paleotrex.
sculpt. I was going to say, is it Paleotrex? That was one on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, that head sculpt is a reference to that original Optimus Primal toy, because the little mace weapon, the skull of it is now the skull of that fossilizer.
That's the stuff I love about Beast Wars. Not to get to it already, but it's those like the weird stuff that doesn't sort of continue on, like the mutant masks and the weird weapons like the mace and stuff. Stuff where it felt like it wasn't the Beast Wars it was going to become, or it has become. It's not like its own thing. It just felt like this more, I don't know, almost 90s. There's this kind of, like the gut gun for Cheetor and stuff like that, and there's just this different tone to it.
Yeah, definitely. There was a bit of almost like not like body horror, but there was a bit of that kind of shock element in the original, in the first toy line. The first year.
I think that qualifies as body horror. That gut gun.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's so 90s, isn't it? It's so of that time, like the comics of the time as well, and the toys. It's all very. There's not really been anything like it since that sort of hits that mark, I don't think.
Yeah, the Mutant Masks is an interesting one. I must admit, I didn't miss it when it was dropped. It was never a gimmick I was hugely keen on, to be completely honest. In fact, I remember on my Ultra Megatron actually taking the little, because he's got this kind of mask that splits open, and then they end up sitting on either side of his head like bat ears almost. And I actually took them off on mine, I think, because you could do that. Same on like Dinobot, on a number of them, you could kind of unpeg the masks. And I think I did do that on a number of my toys back in the day. But, some people loved it as well. And it's kind of, the Mutant Masks, I think, is one of those gimmicks that's kind of fondly remembered by many people, just for being so weird, just for being so out there. Primals was probably one of the more successful, actually. I think on some of the smaller toys like Rhinox and on Dinobot, it was a little bit more clunky because it kind of impeded the main head.
I was actually looking at Rhinoxes today, like before
it's
doing
weird.
this episode, and I was looking at it going, I couldn't tell which one was the right one at first. I was like, they're both green heads. It's very difficult to spot the difference.
Yeah, Rhinox is a good example of one that they kind of, in many ways, took the very basic design of for the cartoon, but completely overhauled it, really. I mean, the details are just not there on the toy. And that's why those original toys, those 96 toys from the cartoon, have been re-released so many times, because there's been numerous new versions of them to try and make them closer to the cartoon. You've had Optimus Primal re-released with a remolded gorilla face to try and make it more like the cartoon interpretation. They've been repainted several times over, the Telemocha versions in Japan, all of that. And it's purely because people want them to look more like they do in the show. Whereas then later, the Transmetals, it's bang on already. I mean, stuff like Optimus Primal Transmetal is about as cartoon accurate as toys got at that stage. I would struggle to. I think it must have at the time been the most cartoon accurate toy of any Transformer at that point. I can't think there was anything in G1 that rivaled it.
It's kind of set that tone, didn't it? That we sort of adhere to now, where all toys have to be as show accurate as possible. It's kind of it begins here, doesn't it? Really.
It really does. I remember it feeling like a thrill. I remember seeing the season 2 episodes, having the Transmetal toys, and just being, like mind blown about how close to the animation they were. It was definitely a thrill.
It makes such a big difference, doesn't it? And I just remember enjoying all of RID because of how show accurate or how toy accurate the animation was. And it does make a difference. It's definitely, it kind of speaks to that connection that you have between wanting to own a physical representation of what you're seeing on screen and enjoying. It links those two worlds together, and I think that's something that's really at the core of our hobby. And I remember Mark Belomo talking about this on The Toys That Made Us, like trying to explain to non-collectors, why do people collect toys of shows and movies and cartoons and franchises that they like? To try to equate it to like, well, sports fans can buy replica gear or they can buy the equipment that they're watching professionals use and then go and partake in the sport themselves. And this is sort of like, well, we're not going to turn into pigs and, go and fight an intergalactic war.
They'll become a man in a pig.
Right.
You could wear a pig costume, Maz.
Yeah. I totally could. But we can own the toys. And that's why when they're closer to the animation, which I guess, like you're saying, this element of Beast Wars was the first time that it was that good, and that it's a big deal.
For me, sure. I mean, I'm honestly now racking my brains through G1 trying to think of a toy that was prominent in the cartoon in any big way that was cartoon accurate. I mean, you had stuff like Action Masters and things like that kind of retrospectively tried to look a little bit more like the fiction, but even then, like Action Master Megatron, I guess, comes pretty close to looking like the cartoon. But I don't know if I would count that necessarily. Yeah, no fusion cannon. Yeah, right.
Left off its most important element.
I'm still sore about that, but I'm joking. But there were definitely attempts at it, but by and large, they didn't really look much like the fiction, even in the comics and whatever. They were stylized and simplified and whatever. So yeah, it was a huge deal, and I think it's one thing you'll hear a lot of people talk about when they talk about the Transmetal year, especially, is how close they came. And it carried on. I mean, stuff like Rampage is a good example of another toy. Tarantulas,
you showed that to me today, and I was like, "That's fantastic. That is actually a wonderful representation of that character."
It's beautiful. The only difference is the face, literally, because he's got two eyes instead of a visor. But
it gives life to those toys as well, doesn't it? When you see them on screen moving about, and then you can also pick them up. It adds something, doesn't it, like that?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, this shows you how accurate they were. I remember, even at whatever age I would have been, I mean, 90, so I would have been 15, 16 maybe. I remember in my head nitpicking Transmetal Rat Trap because the backpack doesn't rotate in the same way as it does in the show. So the wheels end up on the top of his backpack. They're kind of on his bum. And he's got a bit of a big bum. And I remember at the time that wasn't like a big deal. I still love the toy, but I remember thinking, oh man, the other toys are so accurate, and this guy, look at it, the backpack doesn't rotate. That's a real fail. And so it just shows you that how quickly you kind of adapt to that feeling of cartoon accuracy.
I remember being annoyed watching Transformers the movie that the G1 Hot Rod toy couldn't do that amazing arm twist that he does on Quintessa after he fixes Cup, or just the way that he transforms on Lookout Mountain.
Or the fact that it wasn't pink, maybe?
Exactly. Thank you. Took the words right out of my mouth.
It's always the worst part. So heartbreaking.
But that's the thing. It's like watching cool robots on TV do cool stuff that appeals to you, and you go, whoa, as a kid. If the toys can accomplish that or come close to that visually, that's got to be a big part of its success. And with Beast Wars having an excellent storyline, great cartoon, and then finally having toys that were fantastic representations, it has to be like two big pillars of why it was such a successful toy line and did so much for Transformers.
And in the case of Hot Rod, I think it's so egregious because they focus on it so much. It's like almost the film slows down for a second to show you that transformation. It's almost like they're telling you this is how you transform your toy, and then the toy is nothing like that. And I think that's worse.
But Beast Wars does do it.
Yeah,
Beast Wars does do it. Yes, and you're right in that even the first year toys, they transform very much like the toy. Even though the details might differ in terms of the appearance, they do by and large transform basically like the toys. Dinobot doesn't, and a few of them don't. But yeah, the Optimus Primal, you're right. That waist twist thing that he does, I can even hear the noise of it. The kind of gadunk gadunk as he's kind of walking around. Is hugely representative of the show. I remember seeing that for the first time, that huge transformation sequence, and just being glued to the screen like, what? What is going on? This is exceptional, because you've just never seen transformations like it. And I think then, looking forward to the more cartoon accurate toys, the Transmetals and all of that, they, especially, you could see the way that they actually transformed on screen, again, was hugely accurate to the toys. They really had clearly sat with the toys and just kind of modeled them off that. It's really interesting to see. I think it helps that it was CGI, surely. I mean, that it was so kind of clean and all of that.
Oh my God. I know we didn't mention it earlier, but can I just say, now you're talking about transformation. In the show, one of the things I really love about it, not being a big Beast Wars fan, is how they were
beginning to wonder about that, actually.
I love it now. I'm all over it. No, it's, how they've got that thing where it's like the energon in the atmosphere or whatever forces them to have the beast modes.
I love that so much. I love that. Yeah, that's such a good feature.
I wish I'd have brought that up earlier, but that's just such a cool idea. Just a neat little storytelling device.
Well, it is, but it also explains the whole concept of why they do it. And it's almost like, they get to having animal modes within the first 5 minutes of the first show, and it's not even questioned. It's just like, we're going to have animal modes. Cool, boom, done. And it's like, it doesn't need I think that efficiency of storytelling is really quite impressive because you could have had, or I'm thinking of other shows that have to go out of their way to explain those kind of concepts to the point where it's like a whole 2-part episode and you're just getting to the kind of established sort of equilibrium, if you like, of the show by the end of that first 2-parter. Whereas in Beast Wars, literally, I mean, the first 5 minutes of that first show, boom, 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 established. It's just done. And they kind of crack on with the good stuff. And I think it's really impressive.
Yeah, and it's a great excuse to constantly reinforce to kids that these transform, because they are constantly transforming, which in modern fiction you don't see so much. Like in the comics, they're almost always robots, and it's very rare. But in a lot of the cartoons, they do transform, but not at the same sort of rate they do in Beast Wars, I don't think. And I think that's really good.
It'll be interesting to see Kingdom. Obviously, the cartoon is coming up. We've just had the trailer. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll probably watch it later. But one criticism I have of those War for Cybertron cartoons. I have to say it. Why do the characters not transform on screen? I know it's budgetary and I know all of that reasoning, but I feel like it should be prioritized. And one thing I will say positively about Beast Wars is that they go out of their way to show you robots transforming. It happens a lot.
And it's nice to see it, no pun intended, organically in the show. Whereas obviously you just have to look at car robots and robots in disguise when the whole transformation thing. You just sit back and look at your watch, like, when is this done? When the whole crew want to change from car to robot, it's like, okay, let's just go and make a cuppa while this gets done.
Yeah,
but yeah, so I found it really good in Beast Wars. That was really nicely handled, the whole thing.
I mean, there's a bit of that, isn't there, at the start with the whole terrorize, and you get particularly in the first episode, you get the whole suite of them. Was it all like 10 characters all lining up and doing it? I think maybe 9 characters in that scene because there's no Dinobot. But I think actually I remember that being something that was discussed by either Bob Ford or Larry DiTillio online, saying we're going to phase out the terrorize and maximize in season 2 onwards. And you can see that they do over time, that it becomes less of a thing.
They just say beast mode, don't they?
Yeah, sometimes, or even they just transform a lot of the time. But
I was fascinated to find that Dinobot had to reprogram himself to say maximize, doesn't he? I was like, I didn't realize that. It never clicked that it was such an important part of them transforming at the start. I just thought it was a thing they said for the sake of saying it, but it actually has a reason.
It actually has a reason. So, and then later, spoiler alert, Blackarachnia does the same when she switches over to the Maximals. Which is cool as well. So
that is legitimately a spoiler. I haven't got that far yet.
Oops, sorry.
But no, that's on me. It's only been like 4 years since I got to that part of season 3. Like, so it was about, and I'm really looking forward to
24
the
years.
fact that
I was going to say it's been more than 20 since the show, but yeah. And you knew that she was a good guy at some point, right? Like,
I didn't know she switched sides. I didn't actually know that. But obviously I've seen the Transmetal Blackarachnia toy as well, so now I know.
Yeah.
You made the point in a conversation we had before recording that Blackarachnia was the first retail female Transformers character. Is that correct?
She was not the first. Well, technically not the first female Transformer, because there was a convention exclusive BotCon Night Racer. Right? Yeah, the GoBot. But if you don't count that, then yes, first retail release was Blackarachnia, first female Transformer for sure. Which is cool.
And how do you think her depiction in the show holds up today?
Man, I think it's a really tricky one. I think that it's a problematic look in many ways. I mean, even the description of it, the guys that designed it, all due respect to Mainframe, because I think, despite what people say, I do think that actually the animation is good. I think there's a lot of criticism of the animation, but they outright said that they designed Blackarachnia after a visit to a strip club, and that was the inspiration for that character. And I think it shows, because it's there's a lot of it's not necessarily in the best taste, I would say. I think it's a really difficult one now, because kind of what do you do with it? It's a somewhat problematic depiction in some ways. It's also an established character that people really like, and there are, I know, plenty of women or whatever that really love that character as well. So honestly, I don't know what the best answer is. I've got the Masterpiece toy of her. Plenty of people Really like the Kingdom toy as well, and that is very close to the original animation and the original depiction. With the chest and all of that. So I don't know, man. I don't really know what the answer is these days. It's kind of one of those things where if it would never be done today, would it? It would never be done now. And I think quite rightly, if that design was put into a children's cartoon now, people would have raised eyebrows about it. But somehow back in the 90s, I guess it was more acceptable. I don't know.
But then at the same time, you had Airazor in the show as well, who wasn't depicted in that fashion.
No, and Airazor felt in many ways like a much more, certainly visually, like a more kind of credible depiction, I suppose, of what you might imagine a female Transformer might look like in many regards. But they did do a lot with Blackarachnia as a character as well. And despite whatever questions you might have about the appearance, it's got to be said, they treated that character with a lot of respect. Actually, I think on the whole, she really got a lot of development, probably more than most characters by the end. There are whole episodes dedicated specifically towards kind of moving her character on. Stuff like Bad Spark is an incredible episode, really heavily focused on Blackarachnia and kind of evolving her from just being like, quote unquote a bad girl or whatever. And I think where it started, probably the character, because in the early episodes she does nothing, and probably it started in a bit of a weird place, but they made something good of it.
Evil Waspinator changes from insect to high-tech and puts the sting on Cheetor. But there's more to Cheetor than meets the eye. Under the skin lurks a robot within, with hidden weapons firing. All new Beast Wars, each sold separately.
So one of the things that I noticed when I first joined the fandom and became aware that it was a space that I was sharing, not just with G1 fans who were being nostalgic for that toy line, but also people who had enjoyed Beast Wars, and that was like a whole different side of the fiction, and I thought completely separate at the time, wrongly, was the whole Truck Not Monkey movement, where there was an obvious group of people, and it still kind of persists to today, where they wanted Transformers to remain as they were and not go through this massive change and become something completely different, or organics almost. But one thing that has confused me is, G1 had beast modes. There were plenty of popular, fully accepted and enjoyed animal Transformers in G1. You're talking about
So
Predacons, Dinobots, these are well celebrated Transformers. So it's been interesting for me to try and understand why I had similar feelings, not necessarily that it was wrong and shouldn't exist, but what it was about Beast Wars toys that was initially not appealing to me. And I think one of the things I've noticed is that with things like Predacons and Dinobots and even Terracons, their transformed robot modes still look like mech robots. Sure, there's animal features on them, but it's like they're not really walking on slightly transformed beast feet or things like that. Yes, Scorponok's got big claws as his hands, but he's got robot feet. He's got humanoid feet and features. But whereas you had all the Beast Wars toys, for example, they were, in their robot mode, didn't look to me like a mech robot. And I think that was one of the main things that didn't appeal to me. But
do you mean like how, like with Megatron, for example, the Ultra toy, how like his robot mode feet are the same as his beast mode feet, for example?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
So I think that was where the jarring occurred for me back in the day. And it's interesting now how much watching and enjoying the cartoon has completely removed that as an obstacle for me. However, looking through that first year of Beast Wars toys that you were sharing with me today, that still same feeling is there for me. They're like, yes, I love the characters, but those aren't toys that I want to own. And it's the same thing that has initially been an obstacle for me buying the Predacons in Robots in Disguise. Like I didn't really want to go for Gas Skunk, Slapper, and Night Scream. Now I do. So that I think was my initial obstacle to get over, but that doesn't explain the whole Truck Not Monkey movement. So where did you guys first come across that? What's your experience of that fandom disparity?
For me, it was quite much later. I never realized it was a real big thing, because at that time I'd been so ambivalent toward it. I just kind of dismissed it as not really for me. And so it wasn't until I really got to the internet, like, oh god, whenever the Dreamcast came out, that was like the first time I really got on the internet. And I remember looking and seeing like people really angry about it, like the truck nut monkey thing. And I got I was sort of with it to a degree of I wasn't really into Beast Wars, so I kind of felt like I was, but at the same time, it was not anything to do with that. It's just it wasn't for me, so I wasn't bothered. And yeah, I think it was the first time I really experienced any kind of like vitriol or anything at Transformers. And it actually, I remember it was another reason why for a little while I sort of just ignored Transformers again because I saw it and went, oh, this is a bit too not ready for me. This argument, lads. I'm gonna go back to Star Wars. and so yeah.
Yeah, because there are no arguments in Star Wars. Never, no one argues in Star Wars.
That's what I mean. Across the little digital highway, saw them arguing too, and went, you know what? Let's just play Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, probably a good call.
Yeah, the Truck Nut Monkey thing. It wasn't really until the early 2000s that really became much of a thing in my world. Like I'd seen it and then chose to ignore it, and then after that, it was only when I got really back into Transformers that it became something. It was like I was saying about not having the internet. It's very different because you're not facing it. You have your own opinions on things, then, don't you?
I think I was definitely aware of it at the time, just kind of seeing things on the internet or whatever. But I wasn't sort of actively participating, in user groups or whatever myself at that point. So I didn't really kind of engage in it. So I think it was just something I read about secondhand more than anything. But yeah, I mean, it was a big thing, huge thing. Lots of people hated Beast Wars, hated it, and you know what? I can sort of like the points you're making, Maz, when it's articulated like that. I think it kind of resonates, and you can understand why people may have found it a bit jarring. It was hugely different, it was never going to be for everybody. It's not traditional Transformers in many ways, even though it's connected, and so it's not hard to see why people would have been maybe a little bit turned off by aspects of it. If it's just the organic thing or whatever. I don't think it's always logical, but you can sort of sympathize. I think the level to which it went and the whole Truck Nut Monkey thing was kind of mad. I think that it, and the level of anger that people kind of poured into it was a bit mad for sure.
It's that core thing of I'm gonna make sure I'm extremely vocal about how much I dislike this because I want this dislike to spread, and I want it to become such a loud chorus of dislike that we ensure that nothing is ever again made that is not for me.
Yeah.
And every time I see positivity about it, I am duty bound to combat that positivity with negativity about it to make sure that the positivity is never the overwhelming voice, because that will ensure that this thing that's not for me will continue. And I always wonder, like, is that what's really going on in the heads of people who can't stop themselves from being disparaging about something that others are clearly enjoying?
I honestly do not know. And I say that honestly because I still have that question in my brain today, because it still happens today. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. It happens with Bayformers. It happens with multiple other aspects of the fandom, and I'll be honest, I think it's kind of sad. It's like, I don't say this very often because I do try and keep a positive spin on things. And, of course, like, okay, I sometimes get told online, oh, you're so positive about everything. And you know what? I'm not, because I mean, both of you know I have opinions on things. There are various things about Transformers I do not like, but I don't spend my time focusing on them.
A lot of wrong opinions.
Right, sure. Probably. I'm sure that's true. But, I don't spend my time focusing on the aspects that I don't like. Do you know what I mean? There are definitely things about toys, about some cartoons, whatever, that I'm hugely critical of. But it's not really in my interest to spend my time on this earth focusing on the stuff that I don't like. It just seems like a bit, particularly not today, I would say. Back then is a bit of a different era because Beast Wars was all it was. That was Transformers. Whereas now, God, I mean, if you don't like one aspect of Transformers, so what? Like, there's so much that caters to you. We've never been more catered to as a fandom. So it just seems kind of mad to me. Like, I get, like with Bayformers, I get that some people, a lot of people, were disappointed in the look of the robots, or that that they think the films are a bit crap, and everyone thinks the films are a bit crap. Let's be honest. Even people that like the films can kind of acknowledge that they're whatever. But
that's the same with any era of Transformers that you like.
Yeah,
I mean, even G1ers can look at G1 and love it, but acknowledge what's naff about it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, most can, certainly, yes, definitely. You will always get some that defend it against all reason or whatever, of course. But even Beast Wars, let's be fair, it has its goofy moments. It has its moments where you're like, ooh, that's not so good. But I think it's, as you said, Maz, it's just this outright negativity of like, I'm going to do whatever I can, against all odds to let it be known that I don't like that thing. And it's when you see people that do like that thing, whatever it is, Beast Wars, whatever, and other people are responding to them negatively about it. And it's like, no, there's no need for that. Do you know what I mean? That person's just off quietly enjoying themselves. You can just leave them be and just skip by, just keep scrolling. You don't need to interact here. And that I do find weird.
No, I was going to say, do you think at the core of this is just a great sort of sense that there are a lot of people that can't handle disappointment, but they don't know how to deal with it or quantify it. So the automatic reaction is negativity like that. Like I know from myself, I remember, there's been things where I've seen it for the first time, a toy, and I've gone, I don't like that. And so my first response is just something negative. And you don't catch yourself doing it until you're like, why did I respond like that? Because really, I just don't have to buy it and I never have to look at it and it doesn't really matter. But that's how I think it comes out, doesn't it? People are disappointed. This isn't what they want, like you were saying, Maz. This isn't exactly what they want. And so they want it gone. But it's just, they don't realise you can just walk on by. You can buy something else. And the stuff you like still exists. Because in Beast Wars' case, they're different characters. They aren't Optimus Prime and that Megatron. And that's fictionally in the show. But people don't see that because it's so different. So they just go straight to that. And it's that initial disappointment of, this isn't what I remember. This isn't exactly what I want. So I'm going to stamp my feet until somebody listens.
It's weird.
I get exactly what I want.
This is it. It doesn't change it. It doesn't change the Transformers that you grew up with. It doesn't change Optimus Prime being a truck. Optimus Prime will always be a truck in many people's eyes. Even when he's a car or a shoe or whatever else he is. You know what I mean?
He's still a truck in Beast Wars as well, though. I mean, Optimus Prime is
that's
still
the thing. He appears
Wars.
in the cartoon as a truck. So that's like, what's your problem?
You've assumed they've taken the time to see what Beast Wars is about to know that.
As we all know, they've read the TF wiki from top to bottom.
Well, this would have been me for many years, not actually bothering to watch and realize that this is actually G1. Optimus Prime is in this. Ravage is in this. Megatron is in this. Starscream. But the thing is, like, I wonder if it was also symptomatic of being a certain number of years after G1.
Yes.
And so a majority of people who weren't maybe super invested in the community and the maintenance of a healthy community, reaching a certain age and vocalizing things in a certain way because it had been a certain amount of time since their nostalgia. And I remember being 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, getting back into Transformers and thinking the only way to enjoy this was to go backwards in time and find old toys. I mean, who would have believed you that 20 years on from that point, you would have had every single wish of your G1 Transformers fantasy fulfilled and catered to? Impossible.
Power dashes. That's the kind of insane level we are.
I know. Well, even now, I mean, the fact that actually Beast Wars is making a comeback, do you know what I mean? And I think that's weird in itself. And I think you're seeing some of history repeating itself in that way. Do you know what I mean? Where now you've got Rise of the Beasts coming up, and I think this is fascinating because let's be honest, you've now got hardcore Beast Wars fans that either grew up with it or have adopted it since, whatever the case may be, who are now displeased by some of the choices that we're already seeing being made for Rise of the Beasts. I'm of course talking about Ron Perlman being cast as Optimus Primal, being a polarizing thing. I've seen a lot of people being super positive about it. I've seen a lot of people really hating that decision. And I think that's fascinating because I kind of get it. I understand it. You grew up with it or you love it and you want Gary Chalk as Optimus Primal. That's how you associate the character. But at the same time, all of this, and I say this of G1 as well, it's all going to change. The whole series is about change, and I think it's always gonna evolve. I don't think that you can hang on so preciously to the stuff from your childhood and want to keep it in this like little protective sealed bubble. I don't think that's how it works. But at the same time, the fact that it does evolve and does change, it doesn't alter what your childhood was about. You've still got the old Beast Wars cartoon, you've still got the old Generation 1 cartoon, you've still got the 1986 movie and whatever bit you grew up with. But I think the fact that we are getting a live action film of Beast Wars, I think, is a huge positive, and I think maybe it won't. There are going to be way more changes beyond just the voice actor, let's be fair. And there are going to be things that people don't want to see. I wouldn't be surprised at all. We've seen kind of some of the character list and things like that. There are definitely going to be characters in that are unrecognizable from their original Beast Wars depiction. It's
Primal's going to be a stoner, isn't he? Let's just get there right now.
I think so. I read something about it that I thought was interesting, because someone was saying, obviously in the original cartoon he's a fairly new captain. He's a young captain, whereas clearly if they're got someone like Ron Perlman doing it, the implication is that he's going to be a bit more kind of gruff and world weary, and so it's going to be a different character. But in the same way that Movieverse Optimus Prime is totally different from G1 and whatever, and maybe no one will ever get to see their childhood replicated with 100% accuracy in live action. Maybe that's not what we're due to get, but we'll get something new and different, and it'll keep the franchise moving, and it'll inject a whole lot of cash and into the franchise as well, which in turn then gives us stuff like Masterpiece Transformers, which are hugely G1 faithful and Beast Wars faithful, and now Kingdom toys, which are hugely faithful in many ways. So I just think you can sniff at this stuff and nitpick it over the details of what the kind of new people bringing this fiction to life are putting into it. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge the positive impact that it has on the franchise as a whole.
It's fascinating to me because it feels like it was only like 2 years ago. Like you'd get Beast Wars fans saying, I just want something of Beast Wars. I just want some Beast Wars love. Whereas now, like Maz was saying, like you're so spoiled as a G1 fan, you have everything. And you can start feeling that creeping in with the Beast Wars now, because they're looking at a live action Beast Wars movie and going, they started a petition about a voice actor in a live action Beast Wars movie. This is
it's just an element of fandom, isn't it? Like, you remember,
but I mean, it's so far removed from what we've been used to for like the last 20 years, isn't it, for Beast Wars fans?
But even 2007 was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And even then, we'd had G1 reissues and we'd had a few masterpieces, but Masterpiece hadn't taken off the way it is now. When that movie came out, there was very distinctly some of us who thought, this is great, and I can't wait to see where this goes, because Transformers are on the big screen as live action. Yeah. And there were people who just couldn't get past the fact that those characters didn't look the way they used to, and they were more alien, and they could never get on board with the aesthetic or the storytelling in the movies, assuming there was some. But now it's a world where there have been live action Transformers movies. And what is it, like 6 now up to this point? And now they're getting the movie that belongs to their childhood Transformers. And it's almost like there's more license to be unhappy about it.
But
I don't know if maybe that's the feeling.
Do you not think that says something, though, that really we're all the same, no matter what era of Transformers fan you are? Like, because for years there's kind of always been that G1 fans don't like change or anything like that. They won't have anything, and it was always coming from like a very Beast Wars onwards place, wasn't it? It was always, but we'll happily accept anything. But now it's happening to Beast Wars fans. They're reacting in exactly the same way to this sort of anger and outrage over something that really, if it's good, they won't notice, and it's going to bring in more people, because more people know who Ron Perlman is than Gary Chalk. And that's what I mean. And you're kind of seeing that, and we've seen it with movie fans when things have happened in the studio series. When they moved to 86, people were like, get that out of my studio series. And it's like, it's really Transformers fans, we're all just the same. We have, and it doesn't matter what era you're from.
I think you're right, and it's, as Mad said, it's symptomatic of fandom as well, isn't it? And it's just people being protective of the bit that they grew up with, and I can understand that. I can understand why people are protective. I can understand why people want that to look like what they're familiar with. And
well, we invented that as G1ers, didn't we? That sentiment.
We did. Yeah, absolutely, we did.
It's the worst legacy to pass on.
Right.
I just think, I don't know. We've all had it at some point. I just think if you want to enjoy this franchise beyond your own little corner that you grew up with, you've got to accept that it evolves and it changes hugely, and that it's never going to look 100% like it used to at whatever point for you is kind of the sweet spot. And and that's okay. It's not always going to be good. Some of it's going to be a bit crap, but that's okay, because now we're in the 30 whatever year we are, kind of slowly approaching its 40th year, and it's still going. And I think that that Beast Wars is a hugely important part of that, and those fans are a hugely important part of this fandom as well. I hope they enjoy what they see on the screen when it arrives. What is it, next year or whatever? I really, really hope that even the people now that are like, I feel for them that they're upset about Gary Chalk, and I can understand why. I think it could have been a really nice nod, and I get that Peter Cullen was in the first film and all of the logic of it. But I also hope that they can get on board with it and enjoy what they are delivered, even if it looks nothing like what they remember. That would be my hope.
Beast Wars 戦闘開始コンボイ変身メガトロン変身最強ビーストの対決トランスフォーマービーストウォーズ
Speaking of Beast Wars and legacies, let's talk about how this line of toys had a transforming effect on all the toys that came afterwards and all the subsequent toy lines and eras of toys that came afterwards, starting with RID and car robots. Like, if I speak of my own experience, buying the Car Brothers as my first RID toys, in the packaging, it looks like G1. It's a Lamborghini. It's a Dodge Viper. It's an SUV in X-Brawn. And then I transform them, and I experienced something I'd never experienced in Transformers. All those ball joints. Looking at Prowl standing on what looked like really skinny humanoid feet and legs, the same as Sideburn. They didn't have big, chunky, solid legs like all the Transformers I collected had. This was obviously something that was inherited from what came afterwards. So it was like an amalgamation of what had come before. And that was, I guess, a result of following everything that Beast Wars did.
Yeah, it was those toys, especially those three brothers, Car Robot Brothers, are like Beast Wars toys turning into cars. 100%. They absolutely are. If you look at something like, I'm looking at him now, Super Sideburn, or Speedbreaker, rather. It transforms exactly like a latter day Beast Wars toy would, kind of Transmetal 2 or whatever. Just the asymmetry of it is also hugely kind of representative of where the Beast Wars toy line had gone, particularly in its last year with Transmetal 2s. Very, asymmetry. The idea of that in G1 is kind of mad. I mean, other than the odd kind of little bit of molded detail, on stuff like maybe on like Nightbeat's chest and things like this, G1 Transformers are symmetrical. That's kind of the look that they have, by and large, anyway. Someone now is going to be like, not this one or not that one. But, generally speaking.
I was just thinking of Sure Shot's chest, since you mentioned
we told those to Sixo TF.
Yeah, exactly. Send me your examples of asymmetrical G1 Transformers, please. At me. No, please don't. But but it was a definite change in that regard. And that, I think that is from Beast Wars. But I can imagine if you had never been into Beast Wars toys, or G2 even, it would feel like a huge leap from G1 to RID.
Just that massive rear end of Prowl on his arm, or the whole bonnet of X-Brawn on his other arm. And then you just have to look at Beast Wars Megatron, and you begin to see like where that was birthed.
Yes, 100%. I think you're right. Well, there's numerous examples, isn't there? I mean, a lot of Beast Wars toys, particularly some of the Japanese ones. I'm thinking of stuff like Big Convoy now, but they can be quite shell formery, and there's no doubt that like, again, Speedbreaker is a bit of a shell former for sure.
Man in car.
Yeah, it's Man in car for sure. It's Man in car. Whereas actually there are Beast Wars toys where the beast bits are a bit more integrated, but certainly shell formering was an aspect of that toy line. A lot of the time was kind of like the animal unfolds to reveal kind of a skinny robot in the middle. Yeah,
I think that's probably what I had the most jarring effect on me when I was looking at those toys. It was that, it wasn't like looking at G1 Razor Claw or something like that. It was
right.
It was that very different aesthetic that you're describing.
So maybe that's it for a lot of people then, because I mean, it's easy to understand because they don't look like the same toy line. They don't look like the same toys, and that aesthetic was so different. And maybe if they'd just been like G1 Transformers but been organic, maybe people would have been more into it. I don't know.
We're speaking about the shell formery aspect then, just as Sixo was saying, and one of the things I love about RID is it does feel like that, doesn't it? Like he was saying, it's like a man in a shell almost. It's like it unfolds, and it's very much like in Beast Wars, like we were just talking about, how in the cartoon it feels like the organic skin is a shell. It's like a shield, and I always got that impression from the Car Brothers. It's exactly the same. It's like there's a robot hidden in there, rather than like with G1 where the Datsuns, the chest is the front of the car, the legs are the windows, and that was always so jarring about RID. And it's always amazed me that I was never that keen on Beast Wars at the time, but I loved RID straight away. And when we talk about it now, you see that link, but at the time, the things I love about RID, or loved then about RID, I didn't like about Beast Wars because I never connect to them, and it's just completely different.
Who knows then? Maybe it's a personal thing, why some people don't like it, and maybe there are multiple aspects. It's hard to say. I don't know. It's what I find interesting, actually, and not to dwell on this too much because we've already kind of talked about it a bit. The whole kind of anti-Beast Wars sentiment that is still out there. What I did find fascinating is that I read a post on, I think it was on Twitter recently, just a couple of weeks ago, from someone who did the whole, no man, Optimus Prime has got to be a truck, not a monkey, or whatever. And it was a legitimate truck, not monkey post. It was like being back in the 90s. And what was funny was that the dude posting it, he put, I know what he put. He put Optimus Prime's always been a truck and always should be, or something like that. And then I checked his profile, and he was like 20 years old or something. I forget, but literally like 18 or 20. And it was like, hang on a minute, mate. Beast Wars was around long before you. Do you know what I mean? So you've known that Optimus Prime, you've known the whole Beast Wars thing is a thing your entire existence on this planet. So where does it come from then? Do you know what I mean? Where do people that grow up in a world where Beast Wars already exists, how do they choose that it's something that they don't like? That I found fascinating. And again, it's not me, knocking this dude or any of that. Fine, if that's your opinion, fair enough. But it just seemed fascinating to me, the kind of strength of voice, the strength of dislike, if you will, against Beast Wars from someone that, it wasn't like they had this, oh, that's my old Transformers and now you're going against it. Do you know what I mean? It was just very weird.
Yeah. It is an opinion, but like you said there, it's often just, it's almost underpinned with like nonsense and falsehoods. Like you said there, Optimus has always been a truck. It's like, no, he hasn't.
Yeah.
He's been a dragon. All sorts, sorts of random things like that. And it's just that kind of very stuck in a mindset. Nope, it has to only be this, despite the overwhelming evidence of it not only being that.
Right. I just thought it was interesting because it occurred to me that it must be like a learned thing, that people, it's not like people just, I don't know, one day they're like, oh, I hate Beast Wars, it's like, or whatever it is. It's almost like, maybe it's what you said, Maz, that element of fandom that teaches people to be a bit like that. I don't know. But it is really interesting. Beast Wars cops some of the worst of it in Transformers, I think, which is just a shame.
And it's amazing how little that's justified when you actually dissect the toy line and you dissect the fiction, and how much of it still holds up today. And when you see how, apologies for using the word synergy, but how much of that there is in toy and media. So speaking of toys, why don't we move on to talking about the second and third year of Beast Wars toys, things like Fusors and Transmetals. Because I seem to have an amazing effect on making Transmetals disintegrate. And that was obviously a problem with some of them, wasn't it?
Maz breaking stuff? What? This is breaking news.
Maz has the ability to break toys by mental command. Did you know? He can do it from across the room.
Oh my God!
That's you admitting that it was you. That's you telling me it was you that broke it. That's you admitting.
No. I was holding it. This was a toy that I'd owned since the 90s. That had never broken ever, and I was enthusiastically going to show you. And then somehow you used your maybe it was your voice. I don't know, the kind of shockwave. But it was incredible. Honestly, I've never seen a toy shatter like that as soon as you walked in the room. It was absolutely amazing.
But what's interesting is that you were telling me that Transmetal Megatron the Takara version doesn't shatter that way.
No, it doesn't. I have the Takara version now, and yes, it's fine. I was aware of that already because it was one of those things doing the rounds at the time. Oh, the Takara version, from the far off land of Japan is apparently okay. I don't even think, actually, to be fair, that GPS or all of that was really such a prevalent thing back then. But interestingly, actually, I say that it's not even GPS. I don't think with that toy. It's just duff plastic at the waist. But yeah, there was a lot of I don't think a lot of problems with the Beast Wars toy line. There were some elements at that time. I mean, the one that is still a problem is flaky chrome on a lot of the Transmetals, which is annoying. I remember my original Rat Trap Transmetal having quite bad flaking chrome. Stuff like Ramulus is really well known for it. Transmetal too, for having flaky chrome. So there are a couple for sure. I must get around to kind of putting a bit of furniture polish or something, just kind of doing that old trick on some of my Transmetals just to keep them looking nice. One of these days. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. That third year of Beast Wars toys, I think, is amazing. Honestly, I think the Transmetal toys, generally speaking, are excellent. Fusors was a weird one. There's some really I think some of the more out there designs from Beast Wars are Fusors. Because there's they start mixing two animals together, and obviously there were two of them in the show, but beyond that, they get quite weird.
But the Silverbolt toy is actually quite show accurate, isn't it?
Yeah, it is hugely so, and I think all of the toys from that year are. If you look at all of the Transmetals as well, Quick Strike I think is hugely cartoon accurate. Again, the Takara version adds a little bit of extra paint on the eyes and things like that to kind of bring it even closer. But others like Rampage as well, Depth Charge, they're all kind of pretty spot on when you look at how they're portrayed in the cartoon, which is really, really nice. But yeah, that year of toys, I have to say, I've got a lot of time for.
Silverbolt is one I actually had at the time as well. It's a rare Beast Wars toy I had at that time, and I just remember being completely baffled by how it transforms, and so it went in my brother's toy box.
I was just going to say about the transformation, because it's hugely unique. And actually, again, like we were saying earlier, the show does have it transform in the same way, the character. But I think that's something that Beast Wars did really well as well, was that they had very unique transformations. And the way that the legs kind of fold down to the bottom of the body to become the robot mode legs is immense. I've never seen anything like that on another Transformer ever since. So, when I got Silverbolt again recently, I got the Takara Metals 2-pack with Rampage, I was still blown away by that transformation and how good it is.
Yeah, it's fantastic now, but I do remember then it was one of the many things that put me off Beast Wars at the time, because it didn't feel like anything from G1 that I'd ever picked up, and so it was almost an instant turn off. At the same time, oh. Even though I had other Beast Wars toys as well, there was just something about it that felt so different and alien almost.
Hang on, what kind of time period would this have been?
This would have been the late 90s.
So not that long. So actually, when it was released, and you bought it for yourself just to sort of buy a modern Transformers toy?
No, it was my brother. He got it, and I remember having a go on it, and I was like, "Oh, it's exciting! It's a new Transformer." And then being like, "You can have this. It's all right."
So your nan didn't buy you any Beast Wars?
No, not at that time. She was too busy buying me football shirts.
Right.
That's what Liam's gran was doing at this time. I should tell her about this podcast, shouldn't I?
Well, I'm hoping we're going to get her on eventually.
Oh my god, this is a woman who still thinks the automated voice on the phone that tells you it's engaged is an actual person. Trying to explain what a podcast is not going to go down well. Honestly, she shouts at it, and if you try and tell her, you're like, it's a recording. And it's like you can actually see those words come out of your mouth and go around her head, not into her ears, and through a wall. It's like she's just immune to it. It's so bizarre. But yeah, does not like technology. Wouldn't know what a podcast is. Probably would ask if it came on vinyl.
Why don't we?
We could be on vinyl. That would be pretty.
We could be
cool.
Vinyl Tech.
Oh my god.
Although
That
actually, I
is
read
amazing.
something. Oh man,
Transformers. I mean, that's the Japanese way of saying it. Like, I've seen so many toys in
It is
Japan
Vinyl
listed
Tech,
Transformers
yeah.
Vinyl Tech. We could be
Vinyl
Transformers Vinyl Tech.
With feet, that's it. That's amazing.
I read something the other day, actually, not to get too off topic, but about
not to get too off topic, as in not to be exactly what Triple Takeover is every episode.
Well, this is true. We've been remarkably on topic tonight, can I say? But no, actually, I read something saying that actually vinyl. I'd never clocked this before, but apparently vinyl. There's a bit of a kind of movement against it now because it's hugely, obviously kind of expensive to produce in some cases, but also not very environmentally friendly. And so actually people are now kind of saying, moving back to CDs. So it's, I don't know. I need to read a bit more about it to kind of see what it's all about. But I just read that there was a bit of a kind of anti-vinyl movement going on. Yeah, something to think about.
But we can't talk about Takara Metals that you just brought up and not mention X9 Ravage.
Ah, yeah. It's amazing. Well, I think we're predominantly focused on the old Hasbro Kenner toy line today, aren't we? But
because it's in the show and it's such a major moment in the show, having Ravage with that accent, which works remarkably well, I have to say.
I remember doing the watch through with you, and I remember specifically the point in the agenda where Ravage appears, and it's such a cool entrance as well. The way he just kind of glides down and turns visible. I think it's immense. I love the whole backstory of like some of the Decepticons were granted amnesty and rebuilt as Predacons. I think it's great.
They turned Soundwave into a mini disc player, I heard.
They understood the greatest of technology. I've always said the Decepticons were better.
But I think one thing that always struck me about Ravage was the accent. And I guess I was also fascinated to see what your reaction to that accent was going to be. Because I remember hearing it the first time when I watched the show and being like, whoa, what is that? So where did that come from? This kind of weird Russian accent that he's got. Because it's just not how I ever thought of the character. But it does work for him.
It does, yeah. And he's so cool in it as well.
Yeah.
And that's not because he turns into a cassette in that one scene. I just thought he was brilliantly written in the show. And the toy looks pretty accurate to him as well.
Yeah. Do you know what? Considering that it's a heavy retool of Transmetal Cheetor, it works because clearly the animation model is also uses Transmetal Cheetor as the base, for the legs and whatever. So
I actually hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, I'd never really noticed at the time. It was only when I went back because of the toy and looked at it, I was like, oh, okay. But they cleverly do it so that it's not obvious at all. I presume it's a cost-saving thing for the animators. The toy is fabulous, really, really nice, and it comes with some neat little stuff. So it's got like it comes with a default sticker, so you kind of open the chest compartment, and it's got a little sticker inside. And then there's some optional stickers that you can put on there as well. So there's the options are like a Predacon logo, Decepticon logo, I think, and like a little Megatron kind of hologram, like the one that you see in the show, which is really, really quite cool. So yeah, lots of little features in that, and I think I suppose the kind of obvious sign that the show was influencing the toy line as much as the toys were influencing the show, which is quite something.
That's a toy from Beast Wars that I would love to own. I never will, but that's one I would love to see in a reissue form because I'd never really appreciated it until I saw your photos of it, and it was almost like being hit by a brand new toy. And it's just
mate, I was super lucky. I've wanted that toy for years and just saw it pop up, and it was one of those where I knew sort of by the if not that morning, by the end of the day it was going to be gone. Because the price was just insanely good. I'm not one to be like, oh, this is what I paid and whatever, but it was a very, very good price for that toy, and I just knew I had to pounce on it, and I did, and it's mine. So
pounce like a jaguar.
I knew that was going to come up. Yeah, but that was unintentional.
But just on the accent as well, that's also really of its time, isn't it? The mid-90s, it's all ex-KGB, like GoldenEye and stuff. It's all those kind of films, isn't it? Everyone's very over-the-top Russian accents. They're always the Secret Service agents. It's always the sort of the enemies of that era.
Such a cool character to kind of give a redo to as well. And can I say kind of clever because, if they'd have picked like a show speaking character from G1, it would have always been an imitation. Like they did Starscream, and actually the voice actor that does Starscream was the voice actor that did Pterosaur. I think did an amazing job at doing Starscream, has to be said. I mean, it was hugely what's the word for it? Hugely filtered and kind of whatever. But I still think they did a brilliant job. But I think the fact that they chose a character that didn't have a speaking role in the original cartoon saves that comparison. You're not listening to it the whole time going, oh, it doesn't quite sound like it used to. They can get away with so much. So it's a really kind of clever move, I think, in many regards. And I was going to say, the bit where he transforms into the tape, that they wanted to, at that point, have the original Transformers theme song playing. And that was why they were going to have him kind of turn into the tape, go into the cassette drawer, and then blast out the original theme tune as a kind of real, like wink wink to the fans. But they couldn't get the rights for the music, so I think
such a shame that.
Yeah, it's a bit. I think that's why a lot of people, I've heard critiques of that saying, "Oh, it comes off as weird. Why does he transform into a tape?" But it's still cool. It's still a cool moment, I think.
I think you've actually just broke my heart telling me that story.
I think that's another thing in the Beast Wars cartoon that was significant. There was no problem about killing off characters, and that happened regularly. And you were talking earlier, Liam, about how cool it was that they had to return to beast mode, otherwise they risk stasis lock, and that was so much a part of Dinobot's ending as well. And he just had to override that internal mechanism that was going to revert to beast mode. You had to override it to carry on doing what he was doing, and of course that was the episode that he died in. So that was new for a Transformers show, I thought, and was just handled really well, except in the case of, I think it was Scorponok, who was just basically just knocked off a platform. You just saw him
and Pterosaur. Yeah, they just
That's
literally
efficiency. That's what that is.
Yeah. That was very clearly a case of like, oh, we're not selling these toys anymore, so off they go. I guess what was weird was that Pterosaur had a new toy eventually. He had a Transmetal toy. Scorponok not, but hey ho, off they went. I don't think anybody missed Scorponok too greatly, did they?
No, but why did we get Liam and Pterosaur? Is it just because it's a dinosaur?
No, it's because it was one I really wanted. It was when we used to talk about which Beast Wars toys I was really wanted. That was always the top one. The ones I've never owned that I've always almost bought for some reason, but just never quite done it.
So what do you think of it now?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's one of those toys that, you sort of had these expectations for years, and it's almost going to be impossible for them to live up to it. But it actually turned out to be better because I wasn't expecting how it transformed at all. It was completely new to me. And that gun storage in the back of his neck.
I was just going to say the gun storage on that toy is great. I mean, it's a real feature of the whole line. That was something again from G2 that had been, in some toys, not all, but they made it standard, and to their credit. So I think it's great. But yeah, I love Pterosaur.
Yeah, that caught me by surprise. It was when I opened his head and it popped out by shooting across the room, and then I had to go and find it. It just caught me by complete surprise that it was even there. I was like, oh, what was that? But yeah, amazing toy. It's a great toy. And there was a blue redo, wasn't there, in one of the movie toy lines?
It's been repainted many, many times over. There was another repaint, kind of bluish one in Beast Wars as well, Laserbeak it was called, but it was Laserbeak. But I do feel that we should go back a minute and just acknowledge something before somebody is like screaming at their car stereo or whatever, because he's not actually a dinosaur, believe it or not, because old pteranodons, pterodactyls or whatever, they're not actually dinosaurs.
They're considered birds.
Well,
is that right?
Evolutionary pre ancestor, if you like, of birds, as some dinosaurs are as well, I think. But yeah, there are different offshoots. So pterosaurs generally are separate to dinosaurs, different species, which is interesting. So Swoop is not a dinosaur either.
Did you learn that from your son's book?
Do you know, I have talked about it with my son, and actually one of my it was so funny. It came up recently. We were briefly outside and chatting to my neighbor, and he was telling her how pterodactyls and dinosaurs are not the same thing, and she just looked at me like, what? Do you know what I mean? He's just like got that slightly nerdy thing going on with dinosaurs already, quite clearly.
Beast Wars Transformers, battling beasts that transform into raging robots.
So I guess one thing we do need to just kind of address, I guess, with Transmetals before we move on a little bit is the vehicle modes, because we haven't really talked about that yet. And the vehicle modes is a really fascinating one, because I think people have different reactions to it. Some people really love it, and that is a hugely silly aspect of those toys and the cartoon as well. And some people don't care for it as much. And I think even the cartoon tries to kind of lessen the silliness of it just a little bit at times. I mean, like if you look at Transmetal Megatron, obviously he's a flying dinosaur, but he's got kind of these like VTOL hover jets on the side, and then he's got roller skates. I say that
forgotten about the roller skates.
This is it, because they kind of stopped using the roller skates after the first 2 episodes of it. They're like what was it? They first appear in Aftermath, and they do really steer into it to begin with, because they're like, they have a whole like playing chicken thing between him and Rat Trap, kind of going at each other in their vehicle modes. And after a little fashion, there's another scene of him kind of rolling around on his roller skates or whatever, and then after that they just get dropped completely, I think, anyway. But yeah, there's hugely silly aspects of some of those vehicle forms when you think about it. I say that though, but then there are also funny scenes like Dinobot riding on top of Rat Trap.
Well, Dinobot riding Tarantulas in
true.
Code of Hero is the one that stands out to me. Like,
yeah, that's funny.
Why does Tarantulas have that mode?
A spider bike. Yeah, it's a funny one. Isn't it?
It reminded me of the Trotters Independent Traders van. The Robin Reliant.
I'd buy that.
Yeah, that's a collaborative crossover just waiting to happen. There you go. The Reliant Robin. That would be. I would buy that.
Yeah.
Paris,
sure.
Peckham, Rome, prehistoric Earth.
Only rats and cats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No rats and cats, no VAT.
You're right though. Most of the Transmetal toys, they are ridiculous in their way. I mean, even the ones that weren't in the show. I think I showed you a picture of was it Pterosaur, and you were like, "Wow, that is weird." But it turns into a jet. Waspinator is also a jet. It's what's funny is that some of them are. This is the bit that I never kind of got my head around. Some of them are clearly the beast mode with upgrades, I guess. So like Cheetor is a cheetah with little jets so that he can fly. But then you get other Transmetal vehicle modes which are clearly meant to be vehicles. So like Waspinator, although he's not in the show, has an actual cockpit that flips out the front of his like mandibles, and it's very clearly a cockpit with like what you would assume would be where someone would sit. So that just throws in so many questions, like what size is this jet?
Diaclone Insecticon throwback.
Well, yeah, it is a little bit, yeah. There is a little bit of that, definitely. It's a very, very weird one, and the wings and everything. And he's that's one that's very much more like Pterosaur as well, is like clearly a third mode as opposed to a beast mode with bits popping out of it to kind of make it, sort of roll along or whatever. So I feel like with Transmetal modes, it's not hugely consistent in terms of the kind of theory of them, if you like, but it's just a bit of fun.
I mean, they look incredible. I just have to give points for how much they look like the on-screen characters. I mean, that alone is, concept aside, they look like fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you can see that now with there's a third-party company that have started to make some of these designs in kind of masterpiecey style, Transart, and they've done a very nice looking Ravage. Actually, I can't wait to get it in hand. They've done Optimus, they've done Cheetor, which I haven't opened yet, but I have ready to review. And the Optimus is fantastic. But what's very clear is that it's actually not that different from the original toy. I think actually when it first appeared, a lot of people assumed it was just an oversized KO of the original Transmetal toy, but kind of give them a bit more articulated hands, that kind of stuff.
That's Blue Optimus on the skateboard, right?
Yeah.
I must admit, I struggled with that one a little bit. The bright,
surfboard.
Shiny blue Optimus on a surfboard definitely was like, why is that a mode? How has that happened? It was a funny one. That was one that really stood out to me. As I could deal with Rat Trap with wheels and flying Cheetor, and even VTOL Megatron dinosaur was kind of funny and awesome. But yeah, Optimus on skateboard on the surfboard was a tough one.
It is a weird one, and I think actually that's the example that people cite more than any, isn't it? The gorilla on the surfboard, because it's just such a. Even just saying that, surfboard gorilla, it's just such a funny phrase. It's like, what? That was a thing, and I guess it's the dichotomy of saying this is one of, if not the best bits of Transformers fiction from its near 40-year history, and yet for an entire season of the show, one of the main characters is a gorilla that flies on a surfboard. and somehow it kind of works. I don't know, but I think it's with all of that, you just got to kind of steer into it.
Does it though?
I think it
Does
works.
it though?
I think it works. It works.
I'll tell you where it doesn't work. The Transmetals video game. I was playing that recently, and I selected this Optimus with the surfboard, and there was 30 seconds where I couldn't figure out the buttons, so I transformed into it, and I'm just flying around in a circle around Pterosaur, and so he's just transformed into his non-dinosaur mode, and he's sort of just flying around there, just shooting missiles, and it's going on for about 34 seconds, and I can't get out of this circle. I'm just going round and round and round, and then I just rage quit.
If that's not the most Liam story I've ever heard, I don't know what else is. Like, who else could have brought that content to this episode?
That's the Patreon. Liam plays. Many Twitch feed.
Yeah.
Liam plays terrible Transformers games.
I like the surfboard gorilla thing, but I will say I really like the blue on that toy. I think the blue
That's really something.
The blue is stunning.
And you were telling me that there was like a purple variant of that as well, which leads to my, automatically, how much did Beast Wars lean into the whole, revered Transformers tradition of repaints?
Yeah, it did, definitely. I think what it did do well is that it changed a lot of the toys when there were repaints. So there's not that much, actually, I guess, coming off the back of G1, which was, there were virtually no repaints really in G1, are there? There's not a huge amount anyway. I'm just trying to think now through the line. Obviously stuff like Blackarachnia is a repaint of Tarantulas, which doesn't do the character any justice really in terms of the original toy, because it looks zero like the cartoon. But so there are repaints there. BotCon did a number of very well-known repaints, obviously of some toys. The black repaint of Inferno Antagony is one that I've wanted since it was first unveiled in 1997. I want to say it was. I could be wrong on that. But so there are the BotCon ones. But even then, some of the repaints. So there's like there's Wolfang. It was repainted into canine. So it's kind of a wolf into, I think, supposed to be either like a German Shepherd or a dog of some sort. I'm not sure. But, that actually has some retooling going on as well. So where there are repaints, they do sometimes get retooled a little bit. Probably the most obvious repaints, which are just out and out, I don't want to say like cash grab repaints, but like, hey, here are the same molds in different colors, were the Fox Kids ones, which really kind of came a bit later. But it was kind of all the classic characters, if you like, in just weird colors. So like and a lot of people have a lot of affinity for those toys, and I think because of the age, it's like that weird thing of like with Action Masters in G1, where a lot of people the classic characters they were never able to get in toy form, so then the Action Masters became their Optimus Prime or whatever. This was it with a lot of the Fox Kids repaints, which came right at the end. Was that they were, you got like Rhinox, but he was red and white instead of being green and brown. And for a lot of people, that was their Rhinox toy. They just grew up with that Rhinox because they saw the show, but maybe they're a little bit too young to get the original toy. And so, yeah, I think it's fascinating. And so you still see now a lot of reverence for those Fox Kids repaints. A lot of people really like them. So those would be the main ones for me, I think, in where it got like really repaint heavy.
You were just mentioning like Rhinox in white, and that reminded me of, I think it was Polar Claw that I asked about, because I know Liam has it, and I remember you showed me the pictures, the polar bear. So it opens up, and then it was just like all red, like almost top to bottom. I found that weird.
Santa Claus, isn't it?
Is also, that why you wanted it?
You got me that for my birthday. That this was with the pterosaur.
I think this is a bit like when my wife buys something for one of her siblings, and they thank me for the present because we've contributed, and I'm like, yeah, and I turn to my wife, so what did we get him? So how do you like your present that I was so completely aware of that we bought you?
Well, after you put so much effort into it, Maz, I love it. That's another toy which I've always wanted to get, and I've looked. It's been in my eBay watch list for years, and it's not even like it was difficult to get. It's just I couldn't make that leap, and there was just never a time where I, felt like it. But Yeah, actually getting it in hand is incredible. The way it
What
unfolds.
made you want it?
Dude's got a bat as a hand. Literally shoots a bat from his hand.
A bat, an actual animal bat, or a tennis bat?
Well,
Oh.
animal bat. That would be cool if he's shooting a cricket bat out of his hand.
It's like, I know what his history is with sport. Like, what is he getting at here?
Yeah, it's got it fires David Gower at people.
So why does a polar bear fire a bat?
I've just got to say, I'm just now imagining what this episode would be like if I just kept quiet this whole time and just you two back and forth going, "Is it a cricket bat?" No.
Like,
we haven't even started talking about Magnaboss yet, mate. There's still time for that. Yeah.
This episode, it'd just be me going to Maz. Maz, have you seen that one where it turns into a child with wheels? When it's like beast machines or something.
Okay, so why was this polar bear firing a bat?
Well, the Mega Toys in the first year had little spring-loaded kind of cybernetic partner accessories. So Scorponok is the same. But so like in the show, you know, Scorponok has his little cyber bee. I don't know if you remember that he fires.
Oh, yes.
That's from the toy. So the toy in his claws, in one of the claws, it has a gimmick. So one claw fires missiles, spring-loaded, and the other claw has a little kind of splits apart and fires off and turns into a little cyber bee accessory. And Polar Claw is the same thing. So one of his front legs, they kind of become almost like missile launchers on his shoulders, don't they? And like one of them turns into a bat, and one fires like this little arm claw thing out of it.
It's really neat as well because it's got that flipping head gimmick as well, doesn't it? It's got this whole sort of crazy thing. But yeah, it's just this whole red suit. It's kind of like whenever you see Santa Claus in this like suspenders, it's just got that look to it, and it's just something.
It does.
Really, really like
flipping head. I just thought he's got that flipping heck gimmick. What was this flipping heck gimmick? I thought that's what you said.
It's got this A up mid up gimmick, has it? This Captain Dear Oh Dear.
We've reached that point in the night, haven't we? I thought we'd been remarkably on form considering the topic.
It's 2 hours 20 minutes. Give credit where it's due.
You've done well.
If he hadn't mentioned the cricket bat firing polar bear, we never would have ended up here.
Oh, dearie me. Yeah, well, it's a fun toy. It's one actually that I prefer the mutant head on rather than the normal head because the normal head has that weird fixed smile grin thing going on that I'm not so keen on. So I definitely prefer the mutant head on that one. I really want, again, another BotCon toy. The what's it called? The Barbarian repaint. As his face, Barbarian is the BotCon.
Oh my god!
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, just like Antagony is the Inferno repaint, the black BotCon Inferno repaint. Barbarian.
Credit where it's due. Where it's due.
Those names are exceptional. They're exceptional. But there's a lot of punny names in Beast Wars. There's a lot of that. Baboom.
Yes, I did read about that one. That did make me laugh.
Yeah, Baboom.
I nodded in appreciation for that.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Couldn't have had this podcast without mentioning him.
But isn't he one of the Gorilla Surfboard repaints?
No, he's a separate thing, all his own. He's a very, very cool toy, actually. Mega from the second year, and he's got like a little mohawk in his robot mode. It's very, very weird, but really love that toy.
I noticed a lot of the Beast Wars head sculpts had grimaces. You know, there was a lot of teeth.
A lot of teeth. Yeah, a lot of teeth. And it really works on some of them and it doesn't on others, frankly. So like Polar Claw is one. The actual face, I'm not so keen on that one personally. And yeah, some of them it is a bit much. But I don't know, you just kind of get into it. One thing about Beast Wars is that the aesthetic of it all shifts hugely from year to year, really. You can kind of, from the 4 years of that toy line, I would say it's fairly obvious which year of the toys each toy comes from because you can kind of see in the evolution of it where it kind of sits.
Does he really fire a bat?
Yes,
he does from his hand, like just literally just popping off.
I don't know why this has tickled you.
I wish I was in that meeting, honestly.
Oh, they were having fun with it for sure.
Excellent.
That's amazing. How better to take out the Maximals than shooting a bat in some bloke's face. Surprise! Dracula coming at you.
What's changing at McDonald's? Mega Tough Beast Wars Transmetals. You get one Transformers toy with each Beast Wars My Little Pony Happy Meal you buy. Only at McDonald's.
All right, so I thought we could talk a little bit about the combiners, the Beast combiners.
Love to. Yeah. Well, they were the first, I think, the first combiners that were released since the late 80s, 89, I think it was, in US and Europe anyway, because there hadn't been any combiners, new molds, I should say, in G2, just repaints. So I think the last ones, obviously there had been in Japan, they'd had the 6 combiners and various other things, Landcross. But yeah, so it was quite a big thing. But they're 3-person combiners. So I think, again, it's another where you can see the DNA and the evolution straight to car robots with JRX and those guys.
Well, there would also have been a lot of Brave DNA in that as well, wouldn't there? In things like JRX.
Yeah,
like
quite probably.
J Decker and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Brave stylistically hugely different in, a lot more kind of latter day G1 in terms of the style, big chunky robots, big feet, all of that. But yeah, I'm sure that, from an engineering perspective or kind of just an idea, maybe just the idea perspective, that yes, I'm sure you can see some of the influence, because you're right. Some of the Brave toys, the way that they, combination, huge thing in Brave, even just 2 robots coming together, all of that kind of malarkey. But yeah, Beast Wars, it was a fairly underutilized thing, really. It's only the 2, the 2 combiners. There are not even, I don't think, I'm just trying to rack my brains now, not even any instances of like this toy just combines with that one, like like Magnus and Superfire Convoy from RID, for example, or Car Robots. There's none of that even. It's just literally 2 combiners, and that's your lot. But they are great. They are really good. I remember being super impressed with Magnaboss when I first got it. Just like
that's not Lobster Legs, is it?
That's not that's no, that's Tripredacus. That's Tripredacus, who was in the show technically. They're kind of a peer, sort of. But yeah, really, both of them fascinating and just totally unique.
How do they kind of appear? I've seen the show and I genuinely can't remember it. But...
Well, it's the Tripredacus Council, isn't it? That scene of those 3 guys bathed in the red light talking about dispatching Ravage in the agenda.
That's the one. Yeah, the 3 of them appear, not in combined form, but they're
that would have been a really weird meeting.
It would have been, yeah. Let's combine. They kind of, you can see that they give a bit of a nod to how the toys look, but it's very simplified, but still really good fun.
Would they have been featured in the show after the toys had been released? Would the toys have come first?
That's a really good question. I guess the toys would have been out at the time. I guess it depends on the lead time for making the show. But yes, given that at that point, yeah, they must have been, because given at that point, Transmetal toys had been on shelves the whole of 98 and then were in the show. Whereas actually, yes, Magnaboss and Tripredacus were 97 toys. So yeah, they would have been for sure. So it's a nice nod, I guess. They didn't have to do that. It wasn't really advertising the toy, but it was like a cool thing to include, I guess. But yeah, the toys are amazing. I have the Takara version of Tripredacus, which has the red lobster trousers, M.A.S.K, which I've previously tried to tempt you with, a bit of a Beast Wars lobster combiner.
Just not interested if it's not bisque.
Yeah, it specifically have to say bisque on the box.
Well, it's lobster car gamer thing. It's just that very specific combination.
Right. Okay. It's not just any lobster. I just want to kind of see where we stand on this.
No, it's like polar bear firing a bat levels of madness, which appeals. Which is why now, like, I have to go and check out this polar claw, like, in detail.
Okay, fair enough.
I did have another question, and it's a silly question, but I do want to know: is there actually, across all of the Beast Wars line, a man in a pig?
Yes.
Which one's the man in pig?
Razor Beast.
I really didn't expect that to be a yes.
It's a legit. And what's funny is that every time we've joked about man in pig, I have always had Razor Beast in my brain every time. So Razor Beast in his beast mode looks pretty much exactly like, I forget, from the Lion King. Is it Timon or Pumbaa, the warthog thing? Is it Pumbaa?
Yeah.
It looks exactly like Razor Beast. Looks exactly like Pumbaa from the Lion King. It's that same type of pig essentially. But
does he fire a ferret or something?
No, nothing like that. But no, he's a one of the very early Beast Wars toys, actually, from the first year of Beast Wars toys. He's a flip changer. Very cool toy. Really nice head sculpt. I'll send you a picture. Right, so I've just sent you a picture, Maz, of Razor Beast. There you go. That's him.
That is Man in Pig. Why is he holding a wig? He's got a hairy chest.
He does. That's his gun. He's holding his gun. So his gun is like, it's a bit like a wig, I guess. It's like it comes off and then the gun folds out.
So he's got a wig gun.
It looks like he's scalped someone.
He scalped himself.
They didn't call him like Toupee or something like that.
Toupee. Toupee or not toupee? No, he's a flip changer, but I'd forgotten about the weapon storage for that one actually. But yeah, the wig essentially comes off, the gun folds out, and then the rest you pull the tail, and the whole thing just unfolds like that.
Just picturing him as Pumbaa now.
It's literally
turning
like
into that, holding his scalp.
Yeah, it would be. But I love the idea of crossover potential. I just love the idea of like a Lion King animation, where just suddenly Pumbaa is just like maximize and just transforms, and it's Razor Beast. I don't know.
Rips off his wig.
Yeah, it just rips off his wig, and the rest of the characters are like, "What?"
He's just like Hakuna Matata.
Shit. I think Maz has just died. It's finally seeing Man in Pig realized.
Okay,
there you go. That's it.
Yep.
So this whole time you've been like Man in Pig, and actually there is one. I just thought you knew.
No, I mean, I knew that Beast Wars got pretty mental as it went on. Like Heinlad, is something I know about, which I thought was hilarious that he turned up right at the start of Car Robots, which was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And Stampy and all the rest of it. But yeah, no, I didn't know there was actually a Man in Pig. I think the whole time I've been thinking of like Pretender Snarler, which is actually Pig in Pig.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's man turning into Pig in Pig, isn't it? Yeah. That's like its own thing.
Anyway,
it's like Russian nesting Man in Pig.
But that's a good point actually about the Pretender Beasts, because that's organic as well. Organic beasts. But yeah. Anyway, we've kind of done that whole discussion, haven't we? But just an interesting point. But what was I going to say? Yeah, it's funny you say about Beast Wars getting out there, because actually that Razor Beast toy is year one, and that's already. And you're right about the Japanese toys, that they got really out there. I would say actually the Japanese toys are cool because they brought a lot of beasts that we'd never seen. So like there is a giraffe.
Wow.
The one that everyone thinks of. I love that toy, long rack.
Penguin.
I have it. I was going to say penguin. Yeah, absolutely. There's a rabbit. There's all kinds of stuff.
It's mad. I find that stuff genuinely appealing. Like I've honestly thought about buying a long rack or
long rack's great
for my daughter, or get the penguin or Stampy, and I'd want Heinlad. But
yeah. There is actually a Razor Beast repaint as well from that series, although it's one of the most GPS prone toys in the history of Transformers. It's one that you just basically can't own because it will shatter.
Is it still a pig?
It's still a pig. It's straight up repaint, just in gold plastic. It's like a gold plastic Razor Beast.
So it's Schrodinger's Man in Pig if it's gold plastic.
Wow. Getting all philosophical now, man.
Hey, man, we have to bring that intelligent chat.
Yeah. Is that what we're doing? I think there are tons of fascinating Takara Beast Wars toys. I would love to get some more of them, actually. I remember I had a mate, not the same mate, another mate, who had some of the Japanese ones back in the day. And he had Long Rack and he had loads of them. And they were really great to see. I love Long Rack. What's really kind of cool about some of those is that they have that asymmetry as well. So, Long Rack again is a good example. A number of them are hugely asymmetrical, just like the Transmetal 2 toys from '99, which was clearly a big thing. But yeah, Takara really went for it. But I think you've kind of got to do a whole other chat on the Takara Beast Wars line, because it just shoots off in its own direction. And of course, they start bringing in G1 molds and G2 molds even, and re-releasing them. So it's just kind of its own bag by that point. Whereas, of course, with Hasbro, I guess you can just say Hasbro by this point, because I don't even know that it was still Kenner at this stage, actually. I'd need to check. But
I think it was 1998. You said that
I think
that finished.
Yeah, I think so. They just kind of, but by this point as well, they'd become a bit more comfortable with it being Transformers. So it kind of Transformers title and everything. Although it had always been there, it had never really gone away. They kind of lent back into a bit more of like, this is Transformers now.
It made me really sad because I obviously love Kenner, so it just kind of it always makes me sad to think of the demise, because they did all the Jurassic Park stuff and all the Batman toys and Star Wars and things, and it's just
Mask,
yeah. But it's really with Beast Wars that it ends, isn't it? Because it's during that time when Hasbro just shut them down. It's so sad.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. But yeah, then came Transmetal 2s, which was, I guess, again, like another evolution. Very weird toys. Like really the designs are out there. So they're like a mesh of organic. So like Transmetals, the thing was that it was like an organic robot mode, although that's kind of a bit of a contradiction in terms, and then a sort of metallized beast mode. So it's kind of flipping the original concept on its head. Whereas Transmetal 2s were just like a sort of mutant amalgamation of the two, just kind of literally kind of swishing them together. So you'd get like majorly organic bits kind of running through, kind of meshed in with robotic bits. So really kind of cool idea. I love the toys, got to say, really, really love the toys, but they are out there. Stuff like Transmetal 2 Scourge is just bizarre. It's like this kind of big insect with just huge legs and just all kinds of colors. It's really like an immense looking toy. Really, really very cool. But stuff like Cheetor, I don't think was such a great toy personally. But again, just like a real weird take on the character.
I'm actually looking for a Transmetal 2 toy right now. I'm looking for a Gale Shark, a Carl Scale Shark, which of course is Cybershark, Transmetal 2 Cybershark.
It is.
So that's a toy that's, that's some beast mode, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a great example of what they did at that point was that, the molding on those Transmetal 2 toys is insane. Like, I genuinely don't think that there are many Transformers toys that can legitimately claim to be as detailed in terms of the molding and paint applications as those Transmetal 2s, because they went full out. There's no bit replicated. So like Cybershark, Gale Shark is a great example. Just looking at the detail of that toy along the side, it's one of those that you can hold it in your hands and just appreciate the level of effort that's gone into it. And then the paint applications, particularly on Gale Shark, I will say they really stepped it up for car robots. But even on the original, the paint applications and everything and the chrome, just really, really quite something. They are almost like little mini works
looking
art.
forward to that. Really looking forward to that. Or even just Skybite, I would, because that's a very funny situation, because obviously that character, it was like a flying shark that turned up in a series called Car Robots, which was mega bizarre to start with. Then he starts spouting haikus and became the comic relief and has this really bizarre robot mode as well. But it became such a funny, specific character, and and that's where this roundabout route that my interest comes from. And now it's to the point where I'm appreciating, like you're saying, this incredible metallic shark mode, this beast mode, and realizing that it originated all the way over here. So it's a really roundabout route of appreciation, but it's still appreciation.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those weird examples where it's not actually the original character that kind of got the focus, because obviously with Skybite, Gale Shark, he was a repaint. And yeah, he's the one, I guess, now that is the kind of most famous, because Cybershark is just a bit of a no-name by comparison. But the original, I do think the Gale Shark color scheme is better, I got to say, because the original is nice. It's kind of green and blue, and it's colorful. But I prefer the Gale Shark colors for sure. But all of those Transmetal 2s, I finally just this last year fulfilled a lifelong ambition of owning 2 more Transmetal 2 toys that I'd never had before. So one was Blackarachnia. And I did a bit of a video on her, and just insanely pretty toy. Again, just the level of detail on that beast mode, little so it's like a real amalgamation of beast stuff, mechanical stuff, all meshed in together. So you've got little kind of sections of like spider hair, like hairy sections, which are quite creepy actually, and then eyes and things like that. And then you've got other sections which are like jagged bits of vacuum metallized metal kind of looking, plastic just kind of meshed in with it. It's really very cool. Ugly as sin, but also kind of beautiful. So very, very strange toy indeed. And notorious for other reasons, that toy as well.
Do you want to go into that?
I guess you kind of got to, don't you? It was known at the time that the toy has a bra essentially, which is glued on in place. But there was so it was a running change, because the very first toys of it, you could remove the bra, because why not? You know what I mean? That's a gimmick, isn't it? For appropriate gimmick for a toy line. But yeah, I guess what was really weird about it was that the show animation took the non-bra version as the inspiration. So actually, in the show, she effectively is has the no bra or whatever. Not that you would really think about it, because it's not like an obvious point. But yeah, just a weird situation all around that. But yeah, then eventually, I remember it at the time being something that was quite controversial. It's just a very weird decision for them to make, I guess. And it's a shame, because it's a great toy, and it's just kind of a bit overshadowed by that kind of legacy, if anything. But just one of those oddities. But yeah, I also recently picked up Megatron as well. Finally picked up the Transmetal 2 Megatron. I'd had the blue Cryotech repaint from Robots in Disguise for many, many years and loved it. But I'd never owned the red Beast Wars version, and finally fulfilled that ambition and could not be happier with it. Insanely good toy.
Pretty fantastic looking figure, actually.
Yeah. I remember at the time when they made Megatron a dragon, it being a bit like, whoa, that's a departure. But also it kind of felt like just a very cool idea. Like, he's been a T-Rex. Where are you going to go from that? How are you going to deliver something that tops that? And definitely there was an element. I'd say that's possibly a critique you could level at Beast Wars, the cartoon and everything, was an element of the stakes just kept getting a bit ridiculous to some extent. Like, you start relatively simple, but characters keep getting given new bodies because there's new toys to sell. So like Cheetor and Optimus and Megatron all go through 3 bodies in the space of 3 seasons, which is a bit mad. But yeah, it made it fun all the same. So and of course, yeah, Optimal Optimus as well. So that's
the toy I really want to talk about, because I remember seeing the third-party version of that came out a couple of years ago.
Was it Perfect Effect? Or...
Right, which looked incredible. And then obviously saw the cartoon, thought that was a really, really cool evolution for him. And now I'm looking at the original vintage toy, electronic, and thinking, well, that might actually be a really cool thing to own. And, that has a cockpit, that's got a vehicle mode and a flight mode and a robot mode and ape mode. It's just, it looks like an incredible toy, is it?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's one that a lot of people remember very fondly. Actually, funnily enough, Paul, you mentioned him earlier, Paul Hitchens. I remember being in his shop, the Space Bridge shop down south in the UK, and he has an Optimal Optimus just kind of hanging behind the sort of counter in his shop. It's quite funny. I don't know why I thought of that, but yeah, I think it's a great toy. Honestly, I think it's insane to look at. I don't have it actually now. I sold my original. And it's one I will own again. I do have the Primal Prime repaint of it, so it's like in Optimus Prime colors, which I also think is insanely lovely. But yeah, I think so. I think all 4 modes are decent. I think they even like the gorilla mode and everything. There's a real presence to it. The robot mode's good. It's very cartoon accurate. It was the first. Because in a way his robot mode head looks more like his season 1 head, the original Ultra head, but with the mouth, and I think they did that justice. The articulation on it's very good. No ankle tilt, which you would assess by modern standards, but at the time it wasn't a thing. So yeah, I think it's a solid toy. I think all 4 modes. It's a lot of fun. It's got gimmicks to it. Just you're going to shoot yourself in the eye at some point. That's the only thing.
This is one I actually had at the time as well. And yeah, it was fantastic. And it almost got me into Beast Wars because it felt so more familiar to me, with it having like a real sort of Cybertronian jet mode and that sort of stuff. And I know I said earlier that my grandma never bought me any Beast Wars toys, but being reminded of this, it just occurred to me that she actually bought me this toy.
There we go.
Liam's grand strikes again.
Old Nana Soapbox.
Yeah.
Here's that swoop you wanted, mate.
He's a dinosaur. Did you know he's not actually a dinosaur anymore? That's what she said. But no, this was completely out of the blue. Like, I wasn't buying Transformers or anything at this time.
That was an impression of me there for a minute.
I was going to say.
An impression of your butler. That's what that was.
Oh, right.
But no, yeah, completely out of the blue. Just one day, it just turned up, and yeah, and it was one of those moments where I opened it and looked at it, and my kind of eyes kind of like wrinkled a little bit. I was like, oh, Beast Wars. And then once I opened it, I was like, oh, this is pretty great. And then lost all the pieces and gave it to a charity shop.
Yeah, but Liam, didn't you see it said electronic on the box? Did you not see that part? In a very 80s style Digiface font. Did you miss that? It's even got a grid pattern underneath the little drawing of him on the box.
It's funny because now you say it, I can actually visualize it. But at the same time, she'd bought me a new Forest shirt, so this was less exciting than the story. That's what I mean.
Can we just get a clarification on something? Are you saying then that your grandmother didn't buy you Transformers toys for the whole first nearly 3 years of Beast Wars? She completely skipped all of those toys, knowing that you did like Transformers, but then Optimus comes out and she's like, yeah, I'll get this one, completely unprompted, therefore implying somehow that she had assessed the toys and their aesthetic and decided that this toy felt a little bit more familiar to the toys from your childhood and therefore might be an appropriate gift. Is that the level of dedication and observation?
I'm telling you, it's the grid pattern on the box that did it. It's the grid pattern on the box. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the electronic. That's it.
There must have been something that she looked at that box and went, he'll like that one, versus all the rats and cats and everything that had come before.
Wow. When you put it into such depth, I never actually thought of that. I just assumed she's seen it on a shelf on the way out of a shop on sale or something, and I'll have a bit of that.
But you know what I mean? Why that toy and not any of the previous Beast Wars?
She's probably got a loft full of years 1, 2, and 3 Beast Wars that she's never dared give him.
Imagine she's got an entire sealed collection of these things, vintage Beast Wars toys, just sat there.
She'd probably be like, I had to send up an exterminator because there's like little pteranodons and all these sort of things, and tiny gorillas running about. But,
mate, you should. All joking aside, you should ask her if she's got any vintage Transformers toys just tucked away that she never gave to you.
That Scorponok you never got.
Yeah, she might have a whole stash.
I'd ask her, but I'd probably get some story about how someone keeps putting stuff in a bin outside. That's probably where that conversation ends up.
正義と悪の対決だ。恐竜がロボットに変身。チーターも変身。トランスフォーマーベースウォーズ。
So just to sort of move towards wrapping this up, why don't you guys tell me what your favorite Beast Wars toys are? If you could pick maybe 1 or 2 or 3 absolute favorites from the line. And obviously, Liam, in your case and my case, I guess we could talk about toys that we'd want to own that we don't. So, Sixo, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, happy to. I guess the one that springs to mind first of all, that we haven't really talked about too much, only kind of briefly, is Rampage, which is going to be, I'm sure a lot of people are going to groan when they hear that because it's kind of an obvious one, just because he's a very cool character anyway. I like that with the character, just talking about the character briefly, I like that they had him initially as like your typical classic intimidating bad guy, but then they did something different with him, like straight off the bat. Second episode he's in, transmutate, and they kind of subvert expectations with him a little bit, because actually he does have a heart and he's not just like a senseless baddie and all of that. But he does have that kind of cruel streak to him, and yeah, it's a very, very cool character. But yeah, the toy is immense, absolutely immense. So it's one of the toys that really kind of gets the whole concept of Transmetals best, because it's very clearly a robotic crab mode, and the crab is huge. I mean, the size of the claws alone. I remember bringing it to the pub once, actually, and people that had not seen it in years or never seen it were just like, whoa, because it was just the size of it is incredible. The legs look amazing. It stands on its own. It's really, really good crab mode. And then it turns into a tank. I was going to say, actually, and the other thing with the kind of whole transmetal concept is that when it transforms into the robot mode is very clearly organic. So it's like organic crab chest, which doesn't appear, or much of it anyway, in the beast mode. So you get like a whole kind of section of the crab which only exists in robot mode. It's kind of like almost like it's been de-shelled a little bit. It's a bit weird, but I think it really, really works to my eye. And it's very, very cartoon accurate on the whole. The only real deviation between it and the cartoon is that some of the beast mode legs end up on his arms instead of on his backpack. But then it has the tank mode, which I got to tell you, I distinctly remember seeing that tank mode in toy form for the first time in my hands, and it's just one of those experiences that will never leave me in terms of toy collecting. It's just so fun. It has actual working rubber treads, which is just brilliant, honestly brilliant, and just love everything about that toy. Big fan of depth charge as well. Obviously came out at the same time. Let down slightly by a very, very big backpack on that toy, but the beast mode is one for the ages. Honestly, just absolutely insanely good manta ray mode. And again, a really lovely looking toy. Got to be said. I think some of the real big toys are just real events as well. Like there's some really nice ones. I mean, again, Magnaboss, love it. Can't wait. I've got 2/3 of it at the moment. Really trying to track down a Lio Junior currently. So that's a real favorite. Again, Tarantulas, Transmetal Tarantulas, we mentioned. Absolutely love that one as well.
Amazing.
That's a cool beast mode, manta ray. That's cool.
It's very different as well. And I remember actually,
things, doesn't he? Has a firing gimmick.
He does, yeah. He's got like a disc gimmick, a little bit similar to like G2 Laser Prime. Actually,
this is actually another one I had. This show's revealing all sorts to me. Like, I completely forgot.
It's got a little. What is cool is his gun features in the cartoon as well. It's like a little drone, almost like a little shark drone. And he does use it in the cartoon. He kind of fires it off to go and search underwater for him and things like that. But that's very cool. But I think interesting about the show actually with depth charge. I'm sure at the time I remember that water had been a real problem for them, and that they weren't sure how to do water in terms of the animation.
Oh, mainframe.
Yeah, because it was around that time where anything, certain textures are obviously easier to animate than others, and like metal happens to be one that's quite comparatively easy, whereas water was always a real challenge. And I think it was around that time where actually the technology was kind of updating every day, hence why season 2 looks better than 1, 3 looks better than 2. But it was only when they got to season 3 that they realized how to do it, and that's why you got a couple of underwater episodes and you've got depth charge in it at all. Because I think it was kind of down to the wire of like, could we make it happen or not? And that's why there are virtually no underwater scenes. I think they wanted to include Cybershark originally, but they couldn't get the underwater looking right, so they abandoned the idea.
I'm glad actually, because if we'd gotten Cybershark in Beast Wars, there's a chance we wouldn't have gotten him in Car Robots or
Very likely.
RID.
Very likely.
But I mean, in terms of underwater shots, they just needed to do what Liam did and put like a blue shirt down, and they just like fake grass stuck to it or something. That's all they needed to do.
Mainframe, if you need an expert, I'm always available. I've still got the shirt. You can borrow it. I was
going to say, do you come with the shirt?
It comes in a little Pyrex dish.
Well, is it still in there?
Have to provide their own water.
So, Liam, your favourite Beast Wars toys?
Mine are quite easy. It's going to be obviously Pterosaur because he's fantastic, and Optimal Optimus because that is a real top tier toy. Even no matter what era of toys you like, that is just a fantastic toy. I'd quite like to get they did a Power of the Primes version. I don't know if you ever saw that. Would quite like to get that. But there are some toys I would like to get. So Long Rack, because he's absolutely nuts. The bonkers toys appeals to me on every level. And the BotCon exclusive Megatron from 2006.
Is that still really costly? Because I remember it went through a phase of being obscenely expensive.
I assume so. I just kind of all that the BotCon stuff from that time is particularly Beast Wars, I'd imagine, because that whole set's pretty cool. But yeah, I'd quite like to own that. There's so many from Beast Wars I'd actually quite like to own them all. X9 Ravage, all there's lots and lots.
I think for me, in terms of wants, it would definitely be a couple of the BotCon ones. Antagony would be very high up that list for sure.
Oh my gosh! Sorry, the other one. There's one I would want to own for the royalty. Inferno.
Yeah. It's a cool toy.
Just the original Inferno.
Yeah, and it's because I came really close to buying one in 1998. I was in a game shop in a little horrible town called Pickering. It's where they used to film Heartbeat. But Nick Berry was always swanning around, him and old Greengrass. These guys, but yeah, they had this little computer exchange, it was called, and I used to go and trade games all the time. And I remember that's where I got into Beast Wars a little bit, because they had the Beast Wars game on the PlayStation, which I never knew existed, but it came with an Inferno. But after trading some games in, the guy just let me have the game rather than with the toy, because I wasn't that bothered about it, and I've always regretted it. Because the game was terrible, and I imagine the toy would have been way better.
It's a cool toy. It's one that struggles a little bit with the joints, because the joints are clear plastic in some cases. And so I think you can get a little bit of damage on that, but also they loosen off a little bit over time. So I think it's quite difficult to get it to stand properly in ant mode. But still, I mean, it looks great, definitely.
Yeah. And he's fantastic in the show. It just lights up every scene he's in, because he's just so mad.
Yeah, it's a very unique character, like one that you just never be done again, really.
No.
What about you, Mez?
Oh, well, I have owned the original Optimus Primal, and I thought that was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that toy. And it was funny because I was just borrowing it. It was one of those toys that Paul would give me and say, just try and hate this. And it started with Prime Wheeljack, and I ended up with about like 15 of those in the end with all the repaints and knockoffs. And the other one was this Primal, and I gave him back the Primal eventually, but it was a really fun toy. I'd really like to own the Optimal Optimus. That does look cool, if not just for the box. I mean, that looks fantastic. And Long Rack was a good shout because it's a giraffe. You know,
the best thing is
giraffe former.
Have you seen the little tongue gimmick that it's got?
No.
He's got a little sticky out tongue. And he actually can actually stick his tongue out like that as a little gimmick.
That's great. I mean, that is only helping its cause.
Yeah,
just selling it, isn't it?
Yep. And I guess a rodent that has a clock embedded in its gut and a pair of testicles has got to be investigated, right?
Are you still talking about Beast Wars at this point, or just in general?
Isn't that Hein? And I think there was one more I thought I would be quite interested in owning, but it escapes me at the moment. But those would definitely be ones that I'd consider buying.
That's a good list. Well, maybe we'll have to come back and do some more Japanese Beast Wars stuff another day and kind of get into it, because there's so much to say on that score, and some really fantastic toys as well. Some of which I've only experienced for the first time now. Like Galvatron and things like that I'd never owned before. But that's like a whole other topic, as I say.
Beast Wars. New giant Megatron. New giant Tigerhawk. Triple the might. Triple the terror. Without change, there is no victory. New Megatron and new Tigerhawk. Each sold separately.
Well, that's all we've got time for this episode. We've deep dived to the depths with Beast Wars, and obviously we've just done the Hasbro Beast Wars, but if there's anything you think we missed, please get in touch with us, drop us a message on social. We are at @triple_takeover on Twitter and Instagram, and at Triple Takeover on Facebook. So just pop onto social and let us know what you think. Sixo, where can our followers find you on social?
I'm at SixoTF on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Liam?
I am at Toybox Soapbox on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I have a website, toyboxsoapbox.com, which I'm probably going to update at some point. And basically anywhere. Yes.
And you can find me at TFsquareone, one word, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And thanks again to all of you who have left great comments and feedback on social media. We read them all and are hugely grateful for them all. And a few more shout outs for lovely 5-star Apple reviews to I think it's Ajax Ranger, could be Ajax Ranger, Blue Ridge Fox, TFG1 Mike. And be sure to join us again for the next episode in 2 weeks as we return to our usual fortnightly schedule. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.